evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another round of the Rapid Drivers Club Community Super League Season 2, as brought to you on Assetto Corsa Competizione, available on PC and next generation consoles, but our focus is on the PC version, of course. And tonight, we're in the second round of the 6-round calendar. We've got plenty of more racing action lying in wait, and it's just around the corner. And in terms of the schedule for the racing action tonight, let's take you through it. The time's in British Summer Time, that's BST or UTC +1. In just over 9 minutes time, we'll be getting underway with the qualifying session to set the grid order. That'll be a 15-minute qualifying session taking place at 7:15 this evening, after which we'll be heading straight into the build-up for the feature race for tonight. The single race lasting 90 minutes in total time duration. It is the case we go racing at 7:30, and come the end of it, we will of course have our podium finishers and our winners. And speaking of winners, our top 3 placed drivers will be reading to the post-race interviews at approximately 9:10 this evening to hear their thoughts on what surely will have been another hotly contested race. This broadcast is being brought to you live on 2 media platforms for your viewing pleasure. Firstly, you can go to YouTube, and particular TX141TX or Paul Walsh on YouTube to tune in there. Alternatively, if you are Twitch inclined, you could go to twitch.tv/TX141 and tune in via Twitch. And if you do want to say hi in the chat, don't be shy, we can see both the YouTube and the Twitch chats. And if you're probably wondering who is TX141, who is Paul Walsh, well, that is I'm your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, and I'll be bringing you all the racing action over the course of the championship season. Well, it is the case, speaking of the championship season, as the story continues. Last time out 2 weeks ago in the delayed season opener, what with the DDoS attacks from 4 weeks ago, it is the case we made the whole distance at the South African circuit of Kyalami back on the 9th of July. And my goodness, what a season opener it was, with the SORT Community Racing team taking the championship lead just ahead of SOP Motorsport, or their esports division known as SOP Esports. But it is the case we saw plenty of battles up and down the field. We saw DC-Simracing and Wildthings Racing also being well within the top 5, and it was also the case that Half Fast Gaming and a couple of our other teams just needed to find a little bit more pace or a little bit more fortune out of the circuit. But the story continues today at Donington Park in the United Kingdom. It is the case, as it's the 23rd of July, we make our way to the heart of British Motorsport, and more on the circuit in a short order. But after today, we'll have another 2 weeks before we go down under to Australia, and in particular to the New South Wales circuit of Mount Panorama, known as Bathurst more informally. That'll be on the 6th of August, and then we move into the second half of the season. There's no mid-season break. It is the case that every 2 weeks we go racing. On the 20th of August, we make our way to the rather controversial French circuit, a circuit Paul Ricard. Controversial because some prefer to liken it to a car park, others absolutely love the circuit. It's a bit of a Marmite track. And then for the penultimate round, we'll be heading back to United Kingdom for Alton Park, and then last but not least, we'll be making our way across the pond to the United States of America for the Watkins Glen circuit, indeed the home and the founding ground of the road racing revival in the state of New York in the United States of America. The Glen awaits in the season finale on the 17th of September. We've got plenty of racing to go, and the story will continue. And in terms of the story so far, well, here are the championship stands. Of course, our focus being on the teams or the communities championship rather than the individual drivers' points. And it is the case, as we said moments ago, looking at our top 5, SORT Community Racing leading the way at the moment, only 15 points clear of SOP Motorsport. The two teams taking 2 very different approaches at Kyalami. SORT going all in and looking to score as many points as possible by being right at the top of the field. And it was the case, of course, that Geert Fischer took the win for SORT Community, taking that P1 position ahead of Harry Phillips from Wildthings Racing. The SOP Motorsport, meanwhile, took a different approach. They decided, rather than winning on an outright pace, they were going to do well in terms of outright strategy, and in the end all their drivers opting not to change tyres at the pits, and for 2 of them it worked very well, and for the other 2 it didn't work out quite as well. But SOP Motorsport, particularly Joshua Allen, coming home P3, and they're on 309 points for a deserved reason. DC-Simracing, their P3 on 228 points in a good opener to their season campaign, and Wildthings Racing 28 points behind. But it is the case Wildthings Racing, whilst they did have Harry Phillips, of course, finished second, so their other drivers not quite on the ball by comparison, and some of them coming into some major difficulty. Well, they'll be looking to try and arrest that form. RIP Racing Club in P5, they're on 176 points, and then outside of the top 5, but not to be forgotten about the rest of our competing teams. Rapid Drivers Club, they're on 156 points, the best part of what is 19 clear of the Sim Racing Collective in P7, followed by Quantum Racing in P8, Formula Racing League P9, and Half Fast Game completed the top 10, and then Box Motorsports yet to get any points to the board, as they were not able to take part last time out. Whereas the case as we look from the standings to the circuit today, we're in Leicestershire in the English circuit of Donington Park. Of course, forming part of the United Kingdom is the case as we can see from the circuit map provided us by the simracingwiki.com. We are racing at the full Grand Prix circuit, and this circuit has been used throughout the years over multiple racing disciplines, whether it's Formula 1, of course, all the way out to modern day British GT. This is a circuit which is much loved for its ability to create close racing in the form of a number of sweeping corners. You've got the run from what is Rockgate corner at turn number 1, all the way down through the sweeper corner curves of turns 2 and 3, and into the fast hairpin, known as the old hairpin at turn number 4, before the run to Starkey's Bridge, up towards McLean's at turn 7, and then Coppice corner awaits at turn number 8. But all the way through these opening 8 corners, we have major undulations. It is the case the circuit descends from turn number 1 all the way down to the old hairpin, which is the lowest point on the circuit at turn number 4, and then our drivers make their way uphill to McLean's at turn 7, and uphill again into a blind braking zone for Coppice corner at turn number 8. It's the case our drivers have to brake uphill into a crest. They can't actually see the corner until they've gone into the braking zone. That is how challenging Coppice corner is. And then we have the run down the back straight into the S's, the chicane at turns 9 and 10, before the run to the Melbourne hairpin at turn 11, and then the final corner of Goddard's at turn number 12 before the lap starts again. And with those 2 hairpins making up the final 2 corners, you can be sure there's going to be some lunges on the brakes and some very late braking battles indeed. But in terms of our rules for tonight, it is the case that we just take you through those rules. They are the same as what they were last time. In general, all participants shall be driving the BMW M4 GT3, the German machine, of course, powered by the 6-cylinder engine, the 3-litre 6-cylinder with the turbo system, cranking out over 500 horsepower, and it is a newly introduced machine, of course, the GT World Challenge as of 2022, with the prototype race in 2021, and a very popular car indeed for customers and BMW Motorsport due to its ability to run very well at most circuits, and that's why it's been picked for this season. This is a single driver series, of course, where each driver's points shall be contributed towards their respective community. So whether a driver finishes first, second, or all the way down 20th, the points they score will go to their community's total tally, and we'll be updating on that, of course, at the start of each round, as we have done earlier on in this show already. In terms of qualifying, drivers are permitted to use return to garage or RTG whilst out of the circuit, so long as they do so in a safe manner. And as for the race, there is one mandatory pit stop, which will require fuel to be added, but changing tyres is optional. And of course, that's what leads to the strategic conundrum in terms of, do you take the tyre change and therefore ensure that your stationary time in the pits is 30 seconds, or do you not and have a much faster pit stop? And that's what SOP Motorsport gambled on last time out, and it worked out quite well. And that pit stop must occur inside a 30-minute pit window. And that 30-minute pit window, of course, is localized around the midpoint of the race. So at 45 minutes, that's the midpoint. So you can imagine 15 minutes before that, so 30 minutes into the race, and 15 minutes after. So it is 60 minutes into the race. That is where the pit window spans. And if the pit stop is not made in that pit window, then our drivers shall be disqualified because they will not have met the race requirements. Well, that's enough rules, regulations, and instructions and whatnot. I know what you're all here for. Let's head to those live pictures, and we do see him making his way through the penultimate corner at Melbourne. That is Geert Fischer from S4lt Community Racing. But more importantly here, we've had a little bit of rain arrive at the Donington Park circuit, and indeed the forecast for today was a very odd one, it has to be said. Now, those of you who don't live in the United Kingdom, you may not be aware, but the United Kingdom recently recorded a record-breaking day temperature in excess of 40 degrees centigrade. Now, that sounds like a lot for some, and some of you may be sitting there and thinking, well, where I live, it's 40 degrees every day in summer. Well, regardless, it was a record breaker in the United Kingdom, and what that has led to is a very odd weather pattern moving across the Midlands of the English country in particular. In the fact, particularly Donington being located in Leicestershire, it's quite a bit in the heart of England. It is the case that we do have a mixture of cloud and high temperature and sunshine all into the mix here, and we can see that an ambient at 20 degrees centigrade right now, a track temperature at 25 degrees. We'll have to wait and see how the weather evolves over the course of the racing today, and I do suspect it may evolve rather oddly. It may not be straight sailing for a lot of our drivers, and that could really mix up the field after what was a rather dry race at Kyalami, albeit it was the case it was going late into the evening, and therefore the headlights were on full beam. Well, not today, of course, in the fact that it is currently local time 1:15 in the afternoon, and we see Geert Fischer here, our race winner at Kyalami, making his way down towards the S's once again in the 878 car, and will looking very composed as he just makes his way on through. And indeed, one of his teammates here, and that is Samir Foch, as we see Foch parked up in the pit lane, and he's looking to go racing, of course, after a difficult day at Kyalami where it went wrong through what was the opening corners midway through the race, and he had to recover his race into the top 10, which he did so very well, and he'll be looking not to make the same mistake twice today. He will be instead focusing on trying to keep that momentum all the way through to the conclusion. But we do also look to Menno van der Molen here, the fastest in this final practice session, and the DC-Simracing, the Dutchman here in the Dutch outfit, 3 of their drivers down the far end of the pit lane. Lovely to see them all parked up in formation there. That's a team photo if I've seen one, but we do look from them to the chat right now. And we do say hello in the YouTube chat there to DNA Social, also Lurchies Gaming, and also in the Twitch chat to LowPower73526. And to answer you guys in terms of your comments so far, started off with Low Power and working backwards as we see Tom Davidson here parked in the pit lane for Rapid Drivers Club. It is the case, Low Power. I'm doing good, thank you, Low Power. Hope you're doing well as well. Very excited for the racing today. A circuit which I absolutely love, I must admit. I love all racing circuits, but Donington Park, a fantastic circuit, and I hope to visit it in person one day. But indeed, it should be great racing. And well, we also see up there Lurchies going cheering on FRL, and well, FRL of course having a difficult time last time out at what was Kyalami, and they will be looking to have a better time today, much like Michael Keller will from Wild Things Racing. And for those of you who don't know, it was the case that Michael Keller was the focus of our attention for a few major moments. Well, he won't be wanting to have those major moments here today, where he was able to catch the car, but he will want the car pointed straight on the road at all times rather than having to collect it every so often. And we do look to Kieran Sharp here as he makes his way on out to the final corner, and this practice session is coming to a close. And we see DNA Social there saying, so excited for another round. It was supposed to be racing today, but COVID-19 got me. No energy, unhappy face, but I know the other Half-Fast Gaming drivers are still going to do fantastic. Let's go Half-Fast Gaming. That's absolutely great to hear, DNA Social, that you're tuning in despite the health situation. I'm sorry to hear you've got COVID, but hopefully, whilst this is not going to be a miracle cure to get rid of your COVID-19, hopefully this will bring a smile to your face all the racing, and therefore it can make you feel a little bit better. I can tell you, COVID-19 is still out there in the works. We're qualifying now underway, and it can be a bit of a pain, but we soldier on, and indeed our drivers here soldiering on despite the conditions. And it is the case we go straight into qualifying here, and well, my goodness, as our drivers make their way out, these conditions evolving very interestingly. Now you can see from the top right corner of your screen on that weather radar, we do have rain at the moment, but it is expecting to stop raining in the near future. Oh goodness, here's one of the Saul drivers there, gets it very wrong, exiting the pit lane, and almost spears into the side of Yannick Kurtz there, but thankfully we do have ghosting in the pit lane active, and therefore there is no such contact, but that could have been an absolute disaster. And we do look here to our drivers making their way at the head of the pack, and Harry Phillips here from Wild Things Racing, the Briton, always normally the first to be out of the pits. He loves to charge out there, and I do think he wants to try and keep that space out of the circuit and really set the initial tempo. But the key thing is here, with it looking as though it's going to stop raining shortly within the next 10 minutes, and then we're going to have dry conditions for the remainder of qualifying, or so it would seem. That could mean that the best laps in this qualifying session will only arrive towards the end of the 15 minutes, and therefore right now I think some drivers may decide not to push too hard initially in this qualifying session, or just not go out there and instead wait until the circuit starts to dry up and that rain stops falling. Because you can imagine right now those lap times are going to be focused more around dealing with the water, the standing water on the circuit and the running water, whereas later on when the circuit dries, that's where we'll start to get a proper dry line form, and therefore the grip will start to build on the circuit. We see Harry Phillips are going very deep into the final corner, but to be fair, coming out of God, I'd say you can go a bit deep to get the slingshot out of the final corner, and Phillips will now take us around for an opening flying lap as we ride on board here of Harry Phillips. He heads on through. So breaking into turn number 1, down into Rockgate corner here, getting a nice late apex in third gear, and as he accelerates out, using the exit curve in for now charging flat out down through the crane of curves through turn number 2 here, and now down towards turn number 3, the left-hander, and as he looks to break into the old hairpin, bringing the car over to left to open up the corner and rolling on through in third gear. Wonderful corner when you hook up the old hairpin, but now flat out under Starkey's Bridge, heading through 5 up towards turn number 6, flat out through the double left section, now breaking into McLean's, and as he does so here, pointing the car straight, settling the car down, will roll his way through the right hand and to fight with the steering wheel there. The car really struggling as he now makes his way up into the right hander of what is turn number 7 as he comes on through, looking very compact and heading down towards what is turns 9 and 10. As he heads on down here, it is the case, and we are hearing that some saying that there are some issues with regards to the in-game sound being not quite correct on the broadcast. We will try and fix that for you, ladies and gents, but I'm sorry if that is the case. we will look into that very shortly. But as we do see here, Harry Phillips making his way on down. Here's the case, bringing it through what is the penultimate corner and heading up towards the final corner right now, but a very composed lap as he heads on down and into that braking zone for Goddard as he comes on through here. It's case got a bit of traffic in front of him, but that traffic staying well clear, or is it? No, in fact, cuts across the front there as Harry Phillips exits the final corner, but I don't think they've intersected one another too much. And as he heads to the line, Harry Phillips in the end, well, it's not the best of laps with that interruption, but 30.680 as he jumps back to the pits. But do let us know, ladies and gentlemen, if anybody else, we're hearing from Daz in the YouTube chat and also Low Power in the Twitch chat, that there seems to be some audio issues with the engine audio in particular, but do let us know if you're also experiencing it, so that way we can continue to check if things are being fixed or not. But we do see here Alex Curto making his way all the way up the hill towards Coppice Corner in the half-fast gaming machine, and as he rolls his way through right now, he heads down towards what is the chicane. As he heads on down here, it is the case that Curto looking good, and we are continuing to hear that there are some issues with the audio. So what we're going to do, ladies and gentlemen, is to look to fix those. We will be right back very shortly. We do apologise for this. It does seem to be a little bit of a technical gremlin, but we're back within 2 to 3 minutes, and hopefully they will be fixed. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back, and hopefully with our return those technical gremlins have gone to bed with regards to the engine sounds and the in-simulator audio. Do let us know if you noticed any other differences, but if it's the case it hasn't been fixed, we will take another look, as we do have 8 minutes of qualifying to go. And whilst qualifying is important, we can always sacrifice qualifying for racing, but we're hearing there that it's sounding good, it's sorted, that's great, and it does look as though we just had a slight technical hitch on the simulator. But thank you for pointing that out, and so the story does continue in this qualifying session, and right now it is the case that the Rapid Drivers Club driver of Volkan Bakiridan here, the American driver in the number 18 car, is currently setting the pace in this qualifying session, going through the old hairpin on a 1:29.550, but as he heads on down through the left-handers here at turns 5 and 6 and up towards McLean's at 7, it is the case that the circuit is continuing to evolve. It's moved from a state of damp to greasy, and we have no longer got any rain falling, and now we'll start to see those lap times really coming through as the time wears on down. But as the time wears on down as well, we say hello there to Frank Lucid in the YouTube chat. It is the case that I did have the chance to catch up with some of our team managers in the build up to tonight, and I firstly had the chance to speak to Alex Nunes himself, one of the major individuals, indeed one of the major players at Rapid Drivers Club and one of the brains behind the operation of this series. And what he was saying to me is that in terms of Rapid Drivers Club's feelings for tonight, they're feeling a bit jittery ahead of tonight's race, but they're hoping to bring home more points compared to at Kyalami. It was a difficult day for Rapid Drivers Club at Kyalami. A number of their drivers been involved in incidents, not necessarily of their own doing, but it is the case here today. Kiridan definitely setting the pace in this qualifying session, but we still do have just under half to go, just over 6 minutes, and well, Menno van der Molen not too far behind. Another driver or team I had the chance to catch up with was the SOP Motorsport, the SOP Esports division, and particularly team manager Simon Baggas, and he was saying to me that they do have 4 drivers all from Ireland competing tonight, and that is Simon, Ramsay, Pascal Delucia, Peter, Brett and Jonathan Reed, and we are just trying to find them out of the circuit at the moment, although I don't think they're all out here, although I could be very wrong. We are just trying to find some of the drivers in particular, and there is Simon Ramsay, the SOP Motorsport driver, whose livery hasn't quite loaded. It is in pink, thankfully, which is the base colour for the SOP Motorsport drivers, but we expect a little bit more features on that, and that's something we'll have to take a note for the broadcaster. Round number 3 liveries, of course, do have to go through a very extreme process being loaded here on Assetto Corsa Competizione, but still the SOP pink does shine on through, and he's currently in P9. And what Simon was saying to me in the build-up to tonight was the fact that it's an all-Irish lineup, and on top of that, that the team are hopeful that all of the drivers can finish inside the top 10 after what was a very good performance at Kyalami, with 3 out of 4 drivers finish inside the top 10, so they want to go one step further. And last round it was the case that SOP Motorsport gambled on no tyre changes in the pit stops, and that worked out for 2 of their drivers, particularly Joshua Allen, but it is the case that 2 of their other drivers didn't quite work out for, and so this time around it is the case we are to expect they are going to be using another different strategy here today. They haven't told me what the different strategy is going to be, as I see Jonathan Reed here behind his teammate and the SOP Esports Racing driver rolling his way through turn number 1 here. He's currently P12, but we expect them to do something a bit different, and we'll have to wait and see what exactly SOP Esports Racing have in the agenda. But as you see Reed make his way down through turn number 3 and into 4, it is the case that, well, Baggas been quite open with me there, and I do wonder whether Simon Baggas should have told me all that information, and whether some of the team managers and the other teams are listening in right now, maybe making notes, watch out for what the SOP Motorsport drivers do and whether they do follow suit. Alternatively, they try to adapt to it, so we'll have to wait and see. But as we do look here from Jonathan Reed to what is Quinton Sill, we can see the Wild Things Racing driver here from the United Kingdom, the 704 car, currently in P5, but he's caught up behind now. I believe that is, unless I'm very much mistaken, that is the 161 car. We're just trying to get the number on that car that peels out the way there. That is the 161 car, and that is the car of what is Luke Garr there. And I do believe Luke Garr from Half-Fast Gaming, well, he's had a little bit of a tussle here with the Wild Things Racing driver. The 2 of them not quite able to settle their differences, although in the end Garr, the Canadian driver, backs off but flashes his lights there feverishly. I think he feels as though he was on a lap, and in the end the Wild Things Racing driver has caught up to him too soon. But I do think it is the case that his adversary would argue, well, no, I was going faster and I had the right to go on through. But again, that is the problem, of course, when you catch up to somebody in the qualifying session. They could be on their own fast lap, but they may just be a bit slower than you, but they have every right to be on that lap. But you do see Garr getting out of the way, and his lap has been compromised, and now he gets himself back up to the pace. As we say hello to Comsonot in the YouTube chat, cheering on Sill, and of course that being Quinton Sill, who he's referring to, and Sill involved in that little moment there with Luke Garr. But it does seem as though the 2 have settled their differences, and well, going from one Wild Things Racing driver to another who's just come out the pits. There's the number 8 driver, of course, of Michael Keller, the American, who today will be looking to keep it pointed the right way as he makes his way down through turn number 2. He's currently P10 in this qualifying session, and we have just had a new pole lap set, and that is Tom Davidson from Rapid Drivers Club, who's gone P1 provisional on a 128.052. The track condition continues to be upgraded. It's now up to a fast condition. It's almost at optimal. In this case, we've got a lot of rubber being laid down here. Track temperature has gone up quite significantly to 28 degrees centigrade. It's gained by 3 since the start of this qualified session, and you can imagine now everybody will be giving it their all over a single lap in order to try and get on that top step in terms of the grid. But right now we only have 2.5 minutes left, and Davidson is in the lead position here, but we do have Peter Brett, who's not too far behind, and it does look as though the Irishman looking good for SOP Esports as he makes his way through turns 5 and 6 and up towards turn number 7. But you're right there, Frank Lucid, it is going to get spicy in the final seconds of this qualified session in the fact those times are coming in. But I can tell you one surprise right now, something that is a little bit of a shock to the system. We're not seeing S4lt Community Racing in particular qualifying high in this session, and in fact you have to go down to what is not Christoph Samin. I'm just trying to find why they're drivers right now. It is the case, there is quite a serious gap. I think you have to go down to what is not Yang Kurtz, another one of the DC-Simracing drivers. We've got to go a long way down to find the S4lt drivers, and I think it's the case they may be leaving it all to the last moment. Speaking of leaving it all to the last moment, well, Samir Foch has just gone P3 and his teammate Geert Fischer has just gone P2. They both left it to the very last moment, but Harry Phillips meanwhile here is on a purple lap. He's currently provisional pole, 1.5 minutes left, and he will have one more lap after this. Those lap times are pouring in, and well, Fischer, it is the case that Geert Fischer going P2, Phillips is responding, and we're seeing a repeat of Kyalami, except this time it's Harry Phillips who seems to be the one who's counter-attacking that pole lap, not Fischer. Fischer set the pace, and now Phillips is going faster, but we are keeping an eye on our timing screens. Kurto as well, that's a good point, moving up to 14th there. In fact, moving up from 14th, and they continue to push it around as we do see another lap time coming in, and that's Yannick Kurtz who's just got P2. The DC-Simracing driver's gone fast, but we do have to look back to Harry Phillips here, who currently is half a second up in his previous best, but he's got traffic, and Timu Karppinen, the Finnish driver for S4lt Community, has just gone pole, and Harry Phillips' lap has been completely botched as he counts that timeline, and Samir Foch is now putting in an even faster lap here as he makes his way through the right-hander of Melbourne, the penultimate corner. The S4lt Community driver's got a little bit of traffic in front of him. I think he'll benefit from the draft of the 45 car there, and that number 45 car belonging, as we understand it, we haven't quite got a tag for the number 45 car at the moment, but Samir Foch comes to the timeline here. Will it be enough to take pole? I think he's lost out a little bit. No, he goes P2 by 3 thousandths. We will have one more lap. Alex Rogers, meanwhile, we can see the S4lt Community driver making his way on down. Well, here's the case, he rolls his way on down the hill and looking very fast himself is the Briton, and now the checkered flag is out, so it is the case that we're on those final laps here, and as they make their way through its optimal conditions, whoever's got across that line last will have the track in its optimal condition. I know it says optimal, but I'd be in terms of the fastest possible, as we see a car into the wall there. I'm not quite sure who that is into the wall, but something's got it wrong. That's the number 19 car who's been into one. Also Alex Kurto has been into the wall elsewhere around the circuit, but Alex Rogers here continues to push on through, and Harry Phillips as well. In fact, Rogers has lost out after the opening 2 sectors in terms of that pole time, but meanwhile here is Harry Phillips, who once again is trying to go for pole. We've had Krups go up into the pole position now with a 26.927. He is 800ths faster. Harry Phillips here has traffic once again. He's caught the number 99 car there out of a very misopportune moment, and will this cost him that pole time? He heads on through the penultimate corner now in towards Goddard he goes. He'll need everything he can out of the final corner here to potentially take pole. He rolls his way through the left-hander. He heads to the line. Well, he's 7/10 up on his previous best. What will it be as he crosses the line? It's pole position at 26.415. Is anybody else going to respond here? I don't think so. I think Phillips has done it all at the last moment, and he's got himself 1.5 tenths clear of Samir Foch, and the One Things Racing drives up there. Can we see anything from Pasquale De Lucio there as he makes his way to the line? He heads across the line. He moves up to P7, and then we do see a couple more promotions, but that is it, ladies and gentlemen, and it is Harry Phillips who takes pole position here at Donington in an ever-changing circuit and nailing it right at the end ahead of Samuel Foch. Well, my goodness, you couldn't have asked for a closer qualifying session and one that was more on edge. And well, Fischer P3, Kurtz P4, it is the case that SORT have done a fantastic job with two drivers on the front two rows, and also keep in mind that Karpinen there in P6, they have got a lot of leverage when they go into this race. But as we do clear there, well, in fact, we can't clear the screen at the moment, ladies and gentlemen. We will clear that very shortly. We are just waiting for the transition, and I do apologise. We do need to briefly hide the screen because of the fact we don't want to give the server information away. We'll have to give us a brief moment, as it is the case that we have experienced a slight technical hitch here, but we will get that sorted very shortly. But it is one of those cases now. Everybody are looking to really settle their differences over the course of the race. Qualifying has been absolutely intense, and there is the formation of the grid. We'll be back in a brief moment. As we return to the grid, ladies and gentlemen, apologies for what was that slight technical hitch here. Let's take you through the grid for this round number 2 of the Community Super League. Lineup on pole, Wild Things Racing's Harry Phillips in the United Kingdom, and he is joined in the end by Samuel Foch, the SORT Community driver, P2, alongside, and you can imagine the Triple 8 driver here will be looking to make amends for a difficult day at Kyalami, where he's already had a fantastic start, and he'll have the support of his teammate Geert Fischer, our winner at Kyalami, starting P3, starting off the second row with Yannick Kurtz from DC-Simracing, the Dutch driver, line up alongside in P4. Row number 3 being made up of the SORT combination of Alex Rogers in the United Kingdom and Teemu Karppinen. As we see here, the Finnish driver line up alongside his teammates. SORT have put 4 drivers inside the top 10. They've put them inside the top 6. This is a huge opportunity for them to score major points in this round. Can they pull it off, however? Could we potentially see an all-SORT podium? Well, we'll have to wait and find out. Meanwhile, on row number 4, we have Pascal De Luca here, and the SOP Esports Racing driver from Ireland is joined by Michael Keller from Wild Things Racing, the American qualifying P8, and that represents his door number as well. Perhaps it's fate, we'll have to wait and see. Volkan Bakiridan here from Rapid Drivers Club sets the pace for his team. P9 in the end is the American, and joined on the 5th row by Simon Ramsay, the SOP Motorsport driver, SOP Esports Division driver in P10. Row number 6, Menno van der Molen, the Dutchman here from DC-Simracing, having a difficult qualifying session compared to Kyalami, and he's got a lot to do to get into the top 10, it would seem, with Tom Davidson alongside him from Rapid Drivers Club. P12 is the Briton. Behind him on row number 7, we have Quinton Sill from Wild Things Racing, the Briton, just outside the top 10 and looking to try and keep with his teammates here, with Christopher Kling line up alongside from Rapid Drivers Club, the Swede, line up P14. Then on row number 8, we have Leighton Austin, the Briton from Quantum Racing Team in the 111 car, and he will be joined by Christophe Samin, the DC-Simracing driver from Belgium, and they're starting P16, and they're a strong starter in the midfield. Watch out for them, they'll try and come on through fast. Row number 9 is made up of Ian Hall from Quantum Racing Team, and the Briton there, starting alongside Richard Pixley, who starts P18 for Wild Things Racing, and Quantum Racing Team having a much better qualifying session here at Donington compared to Kyalami. I think they've worked it very well in these changing conditions. Michael Races starts P19 for the FRL Racing Team, and he starts off our 10th row, the number 28 driver, the fastest in his team, being joined by Alex Curto from Half Fast Game, and the Canadian just managing to sneak inside the top 20 in P20. Row number 11 made up of Matt Leyland from RIP Racing Club, and the Briton there out qualifying his teammates, and is joined on row number 11 by Jonathan Reed from SOP Esports. And well, the Briton there has got quite a bit to do to close up to his teammates if he can, but of course keep in mind that Jonathan Reed, a strong race driver, perhaps not as much in qualifying. Behind them on row number 12 we have Elias Anderson from RIP Racing Club, and the Swede behind his teammate in terms of line on the grid, behind Leyland. He starts P23 with Tim Troquet starting P24 for DC-Simracing. The Dutchman having a difficult qualifying session, expecting I think to be much further up there, but that's the way it's rolled, and now he has to find a way to close up over the race. And then on row number 13 we have Rend Nandito, and the Rapid Drivers Club driver from Poland, being joined by Kieran Sharp, the Team TSRC driver P26, and the Briton has got a lot of work here today for the Sim Racing Collective. Behind on row number 14, Peter Brett, the Irishman from SOP Esports, being joined by Juice Luna from Quantum Racing Team, and the Dutchman will find that he's going to have the comfort of Stephen Bain behind him in a line on the grid. But behind him in terms of position is Luke Garr, who starts off row number 15 for Half-Fast Gaming, and the Canadian driver has Stephen Bain for company. P30 there is the Briton for Quantum Racing. Then on row number 16, Benedict Bratz, and the German driver here, and I think he may be racing as part of Box Motorsport, but don't quote me on that. We haven't got a team tag there for the number 45 driver, but he is joined on row number 16 by Matthew Mudd from Half-Fast Gaming, the American, with a difficult qualifying session. We then have Callum Conde from RIP Racing Club starting P33, the Briton in the number 46 car, with a difficult qualifying session, being joined by Lewis Argitsu in P14, and the Half-Fast Gaming driver starts in the penultimate position for the United States of America. And then last but not least, on a lonely row 18 is Christopher Gedman from FRL, and it is the case that Britain has got it all to do from the back of the field. But as we look from the back of the field all the way gradually up towards the front of the field, a field of 35 cars here today at Donington Park. It is a circuit which prides itself on offering overtaking opportunities. There are going to be plenty, and now we wait for Harry Phillips to take the field away for their manual double file formation lap, and we'll be going racing with a rolling start the next time we come around to the start-finish line. And well, the question will be, who will come out on top today? Will the weather play a major factor? We can see that on the weather radar in the next 30 minutes, it's just cloud. And we are hearing that it's mostly cloud now moving across the circuits at the moment, but you can imagine at any moment the clouds could open up, and if they do open up, then the rain will potentially come with them. And well, will it be a case that we might see more than one pit stop here today, or will some drivers be able to outlast the rain into that pit window? It's all to tell, and that's what makes it very interesting here when you've got those changing conditions, and indeed that weather that's quite unpredictable in the United Kingdom, known for its unpredictable weather in the summer, albeit the British people, and myself included, normally spend more time moaning that it's too hot, then it's too cold, then it's too wet, then it's not wet enough. And it is the case, I think our drivers may moan or two if it is the case those conditions change unfavourably in the race. But as we see, all of our drivers making their way down towards what is the old hairpin here. We look to Michael Races, and in fact we do ride on board with Michael Races as he makes his way in this manual formation lap, trying to get some temperature into the tyres and also into the brakes here. And it is a tricky one around here on that warm-up lap, if you will, to get that heat into the tyres. You haven't really got too many long zones in which to be able to extend the car and go quick on the throttle for a brief moment and then slam on the brakes. I can imagine quite a bit of brake dragging will be used here in order to be able to get that temperature. As we see, their race is getting very close to the back of the Wild Things Racing driver in front of him. And I believe that is Pixley, unless I'm mistaken. But as they head on through right now, Race has got a lot to do from where he's starting in that P19 position. But as we do look around to a little bit further down the order from him, looking in particular to Juice Luna here, and starting in that P28 position, the Quantum Racing Team driver will know that it's not necessarily about where you start, it's about where you finish. And Donington Park does also have the major risk factor of contact in the run from turn 1 to turn number 4 at the old hairpin. Name a GT3 class race that hasn't had contact down there. It's very difficult to do so. It's the case the old hairpin is prone to incidents. Will we see one at the start of this race where we've got a very, very strong field of drivers, to be fair, all of them very fair racers, whether as part of this series, the previous season this series, or other series they've competed in, and they'll all look to avoid that contact, but it can happen. And now, speaking of things happening, we have the field starting to move into that double file formation as they head into the Melbourne hairpin. We can see there in the YouTube chat, we've got Denise Pope Racing tuning in and saying good going to Harry Phillips there, but we've also got what is Raphael Scullion cheering on Pascal and Simon from SOP Motorsport. But now it is the case that we wait for Harry Phillips to take our field of 35 drivers through the final corner and to the green to go racing here at Donington Park. And it's lights out and away we go for round number 2 of the Community Super League Season 2, and Harry Phillips gets underway down into turn number 1. He's got Sam Fish on the outside, and Fosh tries to take a little look around the outside, but there's no way round as we do look to the helicam here, and all of our drivers have safely made it through the opening corners as they come charging down the hill through the Craner curves and in towards the old hairpin. And as they do here, you can see Ian Hall already trying to make some ground as we've got a driver running wide up front. That is why the Rapid Drivers Club drivers are a bit further back, and I believe that's Volkan Bakiridan who took a little bit of a run onto the grass through turn number 3, but he survived it, and Michael Keller's had to give him some space to rejoin, but they've all made it through, or just about. As we can see a bit further back here is the case that Ian Hall battling side by side there with Sam In as they make their way through McLean's, but everybody has survived the opening 4 corners. It's wonderful to see, but the battles are pressing on. Jonathan Reed finds himself here pinned to the inside. Oh, where's this battle for P20 versus what is Alex Curto as they head down, and we've got a driver going slowly. I think that's Hall's run wide coming out of Coppice corner, and they're going to look to go 3 wide into the braking zone, but in the end we do see Curto backs out, and they all now settle down, although we've got a bit of contact further back there. I do believe that's Stephen Bain who is caught up in the battle with Peter Brett and Renditi Bentonito as they make their way down towards Melbourne. And meanwhile we look from them to our leaders meanwhile, and it is the case we can see here inside the top 10 Pascal Di Lucia having a good start to his race as he makes his way through the corner, but behind we've got a battle building here, and we see running wide that's Volkan Bakiridan, or I think it may have been a bit of contact with Simon Ramsay as they now make their way onto the second lap. So after 1 lap of racing, it is Harry Phillips who leads ahead of Samuel Foch in P2, followed by Geert Fischer P3, the top 3 as they were. Yannick Kurtz in P4 staying as he was as well, with Alex Rogers and then Timo Karpin in P5, P6. We then have Pascal Di Lucia in P7 as they go charging down through the crane of curves in towards the old hairpin. Then Michael Keller in P8, being followed by Simon Ramsay in P9, and Menno van der Molen in P10. That's your top 10. And then we have Volkan Bakiridan and Tom Davidson P11, P12, and right now both trying to get back into the top 10 for Rapid Drivers Club. They both had a difficult start, mostly Bakiridan, who's dropped a long way down the order outside the top 10 to P11, and I think there may have been some knocks there which will be investigated after the race. We should point out there's no live stewarding, it's all post-race stewarding, but we do have a very strong stewarding team here at Rapid Drivers Club, and what I can tell you, it won't be the drivers from Rapid Drivers Club who do the stewarding, it's an independent board, and they normally do get things right. But as they make their way on down into the braking zone, we do see Karapinen here making another place, and in fact he's made the move on his teammate Rogers, I do believe. We'll take a look back at that. Well, here it was coming out of what was Coppice corner. In fact, that was out McLean's, and as they made their way up into Coppice here, I think there may have been a bit of a mistake from Rogers, and Karapinen simply went through, and I think this was also a place swap in a way. They decided to change the places, and you could see there how it was the case behind. De Luca was trying to also look for an opportunity, but very well played there by the SOP Community drivers. They pinned the 2 drivers together and therefore blocked off any opportunity at Pascal De Luca from gaining the place. Meanwhile, whilst this has happened, and we now look back to live pictures, we can tell you that Geert Fischer has found his way past Samir Foch off camera, and Yannick Kurtz right now is putting pressure on Foch as they make their way down through the crane of curves for the 3rd time of asking. But we are looking at the live timings now, and as they roll the way down and around through the corners, Kurtz trying to get the move on here for DC-Simracing, and you can understand why he wants to try and gain some places early on and not let the SOP Community Racing drivers play their strategy. Whatever it is, he wants to get involved in the mix and upset the strategy that could help him out in the longer duration of this race. But as they go charging up the hill here, we see a little bit further back, a bit of a battle building between Michael Keller and Simon Ramsay as they make their way in to what is Coppice corner, and Keller goes wide, and that's going to open the door. That's also Menno van der Molen who comes on through, and Bakiridan now side by side with Keller as they make their way down towards the S's, and as they head into the braking zone here, well, Bakiridan's going to have the momentum. He gains places. Michael Keller drops 3 places like a stone there, but as they make their way now through the S's and down towards Melbourne, he'll settle down and go racing once again as they build that momentum up into the braking zone. But looking from them to a bit further back, we can see it's really opening up behind, and that is Leighton Austin coming in like a missile into the Melbourne hairpin. Well, there was definitely contact. He's been given a knock wide, and that I believe was Michael Races who is in contact with. I think it's the case that Austin may have come in a little bit too hard, but meanwhile it's all kicking off here in the battle for P17. Michael Races holds on to P17. Behind him is Jonathan Reed and Ian Hall as well as they make their way out of the final corner and down towards Rockgate corner once again they go. And as they do, they tuck in together, all in line formation, as we see Tim Troquet there trying to get up the inside of Ian Hall as they roll through turn number 1, but Troquet not able to find the opportunity this time around, and he will now have to be patient. He'll have to wait, and I can definitely tell you that the DC-Simracing driver who I've had the pleasure of racing in the BMW M2 series hosted by DC-Simracing, he can be very patient when he needs to be and very smart with those overtakes, and right now he's trying to size up one that will enable him to get the momentum on Hall and transfer it over to Jonathan Reed in P18. but there's no change at this time, and Kieran Sharp tucked in behind as they roll their way up through McLean's and on towards Coppice they go. But we ride on board here from the dashboard of the Team Simracing Collective driver, and as he heads his way into Coppice, you can see this long line of drivers which starts with what is effectively at the front of that. That's Matt Leyland in P16 all the way at the tip of the spear for what is RIP Racing Club, and as they make their way down to the braking zone for the S's here, they all have to simply run in formation in a line and wait until somebody gets it wrong or somebody gets an overspeed and kicks off the concertina effect under braking. But you see Sharp here looking for that potential move on the inside. Trockett's going to look for the move instead, and Trockett up the inside there of Hall, and well, Kieran Sharp's going to say, well, if you can keep that door open for me, I'd like to come through too, please. But the door wasn't wide enough for two. It said only one, and you can see Trockett having to go defensive here as they roll their way into the final corner. Through Gollards they go, and as they do, Tim Trockett gets the move done with a very smart move up the inside there into Melbourne, and they make their way onto the next lap. But as they head on down here, that was a move for what is effectively P19. We see Christopher King here up the inside of what is Christoph Samin. He takes P14 of Christoph Samin of the what is the DC-Simracing driver, and now the Rapid Drivers Club driver has to head on in the Hunter Quinton Seal, who's 1.5 seconds up the road. As they roll the way down through the old hairpin here, it is the case that Kling really having to push on and make his way up the hill. Now he's got a gap to close the sill, and it's going to take some time, but in fact that's Davidson who's fallen back. I wonder if Davidson's had a slight off of the old hairpin and lost a bit of momentum in the fact he's dropped behind Quinton Sill, and the Wildfix Racing driver has gained the place at the expense of Davidson as they roll the way through. Rapid Drivers Club really having a difficult start to this race. They've fallen back to a degree, but Kiradan especially, but also Davidson seems to be going backwards, not forwards, and it's not working out right now. But speaking of things working out, we do look up to P2 here, and that's Geert Fischer. You see the race leader there of Harry Phillips just off in the distance slightly, the gap between the two of them just in excess of 2 seconds. But right now SOP Community really delivering the goods. 2 drivers inside the top 3, and they have got all 4 drivers inside the top 10, with the fact they've got Foch just behind Fischer here in P3, and then you can see Karpinen in P5, and then just behind him is Alex Rogers as they make their way down. And I wonder here whether there's a split of the strategies for the SOP Community team, whether they've decided that 2 of their drivers are going to go for faster runs in terms of stints, therefore they've got less fuel in the car, and perhaps it is, and I'm referring in particular to both Fischer and Karpinen. Meanwhile, perhaps Foch and Rogers have got more fuel in the car and are looking to not have to take the fuel in the pits as aggressively, because it is the case that Fischer is breaking away from Foch after Foch of course took that P2 in qualifying, and they swap the places and they're making this seem to work to their strategic advantage. But we'll have to wait and see, as meanwhile we hear that there's a bit of an off there at the old hairpin. I'm not sure who that is, but we can tell you that Christoph Samin is up to P14. He's found his way past Kling, or to hold on versus Kling in fact. I think Kling tried to make the move up into Rockgate from what I'm hearing in my ear, and it was not the case as they make their way through McLean's corner once more. But as they roll the way up the hill now in towards Coppice, you can see just behind Matt Leyland in P16, literally the long cork in the bottle here, and we ride on board the rear wing of Matt Leyland, and that behind him is P17 all the way through to P23. Bain is at the very back of this group, and that shows you how close they are running together. And my goodness, as they all come down through the S's this time, well, you do not want to be Matt Leyland, who as he runs his way up towards the braking zone here for Melbourne, I think he's worried about a potential move as Races takes a look to the inside. But I think Races is more focused out on defending versus Jonathan Reed rather than attacking, as we're hearing that Still is still keeping ahead of Davidson just up in front. But behind there you can see it is the case that Troquet's trying to make the move on Jonathan Reed. He looks up the inside there, does Troquet. They're going through Gollards, and as he does, he gets it done. But has that cost a pair of them too much momentum here, and will that present an opportunity to Ian Hall as they make the way down towards turn number 1? Well, I think it's the case that there's going to be a run here from Ian Hall. He's not going to go for it this time because he's not close enough to open that door up into the very tricky turn number 1 there, where it looks like it's an overtaking opportunity, but it's a very late apex, and therefore you need to have momentum. But as they make the way down through the crane of curves once more here, only 10 minutes of this race complete by the time they get to the end of the run to Coppice Corner. That is how much time we've still got in this race. It is the case that Tim Troquet making moves, but in return now I think he's angered the beast of Jonathan Reed, and Reed is not going to let him go as easily as they make the way up into McLean's this time. And well, it is a very furious SOP Esports BMW M4 behind, and Jonathan Reed I think is saying, I want that P18 back. Well, to get it he's going to have to get alongside, and can he do it in the run out of Coppice and down towards the S's? Well, he's got the rhythm and the momentum here, but I don't think he's got enough straightway to be able to do it. In fact, you can see that he's gaining, but it's not enough to consider the move. But as he heads down into the braking zone for the S's and rolls the car between the two chicane curbs, he gets a much better exit, and Trocat immediately goes defensive here. And Trocat, I think, is already saying he's going to fix himself to the post of P18 as they come on down. And in the rearview picture, we've got one of the Quantum drivers coming in very hot. That was Leighton Austin. Oh, goodness me! It's all kicked off, and Reed has been turned there. What on earth has happened to Jonathan Reed? Well, here's the case that Leighton Austin came in very hot. Let's take a look back very shortly, but before we do, we can see that it's the case that Kieran Sharp capitalising in all of this, in the fact the SimRacing Collective driver has moved up to P20 and seized on the moment. And as they make their way down the straight, I wonder whether there's going to be a few flasher lights from any of the drivers here. Doesn't seem so at the moment. It is the case they stay as they were, and as they make their way, oh, goodness me, that's Tim Trocat who's had a spin at turn number 1. Well, Trocat, who made all that ground, he's now lost it all as he heads onto the crane of curves here, and he drops all the way down to P22. My goodness, it is all kicking off, and there's still plenty to come. As a little bit further back, we can see Elias Anderson there, the RP Racing Club driver, the Swede, going a bit wide, coming out the old hairpin. He brings it back together, but not before running off once more, and that is going to open the door there for Juice Luna from Quantum Racing to gain another place. But as they make the way up into McLean's, Elias Anderson there using up one of his 9 lives, that's a certain. But we must look from them up towards the top 10, and particularly, as Raphael Scullion says in the YouTube chat, Simon Ramsay making the moves. The SOP Motorsport driver is definitely making the moves up to P8 and breaking away from Menno van der Molen and Bakiridan as he heads down towards the Melbourne hairpin into turn number 11. And as he rolls his way on through here, well, you can see Menno van der Molen, in fact, looking quite aggressive there into the braking zone for turn number 11. It has to be said, and van der Molen really trying to put that momentum and that pressure on. But I think Ramsay right now, when he's not in those hairpins, he's absolutely flying. But a bit further up the road, you can see it is the case that as we cut from what is one charging DC-Simracing driver to one who's caught between a rock and a hard place, well, it is the case we do have the salt sandwich here with a DC-Simracing filler, in the fact that you have got in front of him Samir Foch, and behind him you've got Timu Karpinen, and right now we can see that Yannick Kurz under a lot of pressure here as they roll their way through the old hairpin, and Karpinen there just ran a little bit wider, almost unsettling the car a bit too much coming out the old hairpin. But I definitely do think the SOP Community Racing team have split the strategies, and they're trying to ensure that at least all 4 of their drivers finish inside that top 5. That is the attitude I'm getting, but for them to be able to do it, they need to get past Yannick Kurz here, or at least Karpinen needs to, because I think he's running less fuel compared to Foch, and Foch right now is trying to back Kurz into his teammate to enable the move to occur. But as they make the way down towards the S's, it is the case we see just a little bit further back how Alex Rogers here, the last of the runners in the SOP Community Racing team in P6, and he's trying to hold off DeLuca by comparison as hold up say, oh goodness me, Yannick Kurz has got it all wrong at the S's. What on earth has happened to the DC-Simracing driver? He is now dropping down to P7. We'll take a look. As he's making his way on through what was there Coppice Corner, we ride on board, and this will hopefully give us a flavour as he heads down towards what is the S's. And does he simply just attack the curbing here at the S's too aggressively, or is there something else at play as he heads through? In fact, no, he carries too much momentum, and the car bounces, and the suspension just kicks up on the rear, and with that, it is the case that in the end, Yannick Kurz makes a mistake, and that is a costly one. It's dropped him down the order, and he's into that P7 now, and that really opens up the strategy for SOP Community Racing even further. But as we return to those live pictures, we can see it's the case now. Simon Ramsay will have an opportunity here to gain another place versus a wounded Dutchman as they make the way up towards the old hairpin once more. But as we look from the top 10 here down to just outside the top 10, in particular Quinton Silv running P11, the first of our drivers outside the top 10. Wild Things Racing driver at the moment a little bit out of sorts and in a bit of a no man's land, in the fact that he is 3.5 seconds behind what is Volkan Bakiridan in P10, and behind him is Christophe Samin. And right now the Belgian for DC-Simracing under a lot of pressure here from another Wild Things Racing driver, that's Michael Keller, who I think will feel he's got the pace to be in the top 10 at this point in the race. As they roll their way through at the right-hander of turn number 8 through Coppice once more, you can see how Michael Keller is in fact having to do more rear guard action than he is forward thinking, in the fact that he has what is the driver behind him, Tom Davidson, and Davidson takes a peek to the inside into the S's. It was a oh goodness me, and Keller coming into contact there with Christophe Samin. Well, Samin has been knocked across the circuit and he returns, but Michael Keller there I think caught out with the pressure that's being put on by Davidson. And look at this, Christopher Kling coming on through, Matt Leyland coming in on through as well. This has led to what is a disastrous moment there for Michael Keller. He's being caught left, right and centre, and he's dropping like a stone. He has to go defensive into Goddard's, but can he keep Matt Leyland behind? Leyland's going to go around the outside here, and as they make the way to that timing line, only 15 minutes of this race to go. We still got plenty more, 75 minutes still on the clock, plus the final lap, and it is the case that Mike Leyland right now trying to still go for this move, but in the end the door's shut very aggressively across his nose as they make the way through Rock Gate. But to be fair, Leyland is not giving this up. He will have to give up being side by side for the moment, and Michael races now trying to get into the mix. They charge down towards the old hairpin. It's fantastic how close they run, and as they head through turn number 4 here, you can also see that Kieran Sharp trying to get right into that mix as they all go charging up towards turn number 7 once more. And this long pack of drivers here, well, anyone it could kick off. It just kicked off between what was Keller and Samin. I do think it was the fact that we saw Tom Davidson so close and make that dummy in towards the S's that may have just distracted Keller enough to make him miss his braking point and collect Christoph Samin. So it may have been just an accident, and it is the case that with that accident has opened up so much more. And meanwhile, we can see there just behind Kieran Sharp, Leighton Austin now taking a peek into the S's, but he's not close enough, trying to do what Davidson did only moments ago on what is Sharp, but it didn't work. But meanwhile, speaking of Kieran Sharp, he's up the inside here into Melbourne. He's going to look for the move for P16 versus Races. Races on the outside there. He'll try and hang around the outside to get the inside line in towards Goddard's, but it's not going to be here as they head on down. And Kieran Sharp right now gains another place. He's making ground here is Sharp, and the Sim Racing Collective driver now up into what is P16. And I do believe we may have a slight glitch on the timing board then, the bottom right corner of your screen. Don't count that, ladies and gentlemen. We'll keep you posted with the places. But meanwhile, Tim Troquet here making his way past Ian Hall on the exit of Goddard's and heading on to the next lap. And now he's behind his teammate who's in P19. That's Christoph Samin as Tim Troquet moves up to P20, and DC-Simracing once again find themselves trying to creep their way up the top 20 and towards that top 10. They've definitely got the pace here, but they just seem to be struggling with the circuit itself in terms of consistently keeping it on circuit. And Donington Park is one of those circuits, to be fair, which invites you to push hard. It flows so well, Donington Park, that it lulls you into a full sense of security, and if you go too hard, the circuit bites back incredibly nastily straight away. And we've seen that occur to so many drivers so far, and as they make the way up into Coppice this time, the battle calms down for a brief moment, but how long will it be before we start to build the storm once again? But as we look from the drivers here to just outside the top 20, we do look to Jonathan Reed here up the inside through Coppice versus, I believe that is Stephen Bain for Quantum Racing Team. And as the SOP Esports driver heads out the corner, they make the way side by side down the back straight towards the S's. It's Reed on the outside, it's going to be Bain on the inside. Bain's going to defend here, and as they make the way on variable, Reed's going to lose all the momentum and then some, but he stays very close to the QRT driver as they make the way down towards Melbourne. And as they head in towards the hairpin, will we see him move from Reed? No, he waits, he plays it patiently as we got Benedict Bratz here, the German driver in the number 45 car, stays with them and tries to get into the mix, but to no avail right now. And Peter Brett a little bit further back also watches and waits for that opportunity to arise as they head into the final corner here and come to the end of what for them is lap number 12. And speaking of lap number 12, the drivers who are on it right now, Harry Phillips, we look up to here, the leader of this race at this time with a 2.9 second gap over Geert Fischer. But we've seen this before, to be fair. We saw it at Kyalami. Harry Phillips pushed on strong at the start of the race, having secured the front row and got into the lead. This time, of course, starting on pole, and he's tried to break away. Here is Geert Fischer by comparison, and Geert Fischer compared to Samir Foch, his teammate from SOP Community Racing, he has a 4-second gap. And I think Fischer here, his objective is to chase Phillips and force Phillips to have to reveal his strategy, and in doing so then SOP Community Racing will respond across the 4 drivers here in the fact that SOP really do have control of that top 5, top 6, and speaking of top 5, in fact, well, they don't quite have control over top 5 in the fact that in P5 right now we have this man Pascal DeLuca and the SOP Esports driver representing SOP Motorsport community. Of course, the Irishman is in that P5 ahead of Alex Rogers. It's happened off camera, but he's found that move for P5 and continues to push on as they make the way down through turn number 12. And as they roll the way on out here, it is the case we can see a little bit further back Menno van der Molen making moves. He's up to P8 with Simon Ramsay behind, and as they head down the start finish straight here, you can see van der Molen having to defend as Ramsay's going to try and go around the outside. The cameraman reels back there to put both cars in the picture, and as we do, we see Ramsay's not able to find the momentum initially, but he looks at the cut back there as they make the way down the hill, and as they come charge on down, we ride on board here with Simon Ramsay, the Irishman, who is making moves left, right and centre, still, and he's trying to go for that P8 position, but as they head through the old hairpin, he runs a little bit wide, but keeps the car pointing in the right direction. That helps, of course, when you have a run wide, if you can keep the car pointing straight, and he heads up towards McLean's here and to lost some momentum, but definitely looking to be the faster two drivers. But I say that, and it is the case, a little bit unsettled under braking there, having to fight the car to get nose turning into McLean's, and that is giving an opportunity for Bakiridan behind in P10 to close on up here. And now Ramsay really having to fight with the steering wheel there. The car just experiencing a little bit of snap oversteer on the exit of Coppice, where he's getting the power down as aggressively as possible, and now heading into the braking zone here for the S's. They roll the way and through, and Ramsay has got to think more about behind than in front for a brief while, unless he can break away. But Bakiridan about 3 tenths back now as they head into Melbourne, and you can just see that a very quick switch to electronics on the steering wheel from Ramsay. I think he might be adding a little bit more traction control to the car after trying to push that hard in order just to settle the car down. But as they make the way up towards turn number 12 right now to the final corner, they stay as they were, and this battle for P8 will continue as they head on to another lap. But as we do look to the exterior cameras here, we do look outside of the top 20. So Peter Brett, who has just found his way past what is Benedict Bratt, and we take a look at what exactly happened. This was only moments ago in the battle for P27 here, and as they rolled their way through Coppice Corner, you see it is the case that Brett was able to get the run out the corner, and Brett's having to go defensive on the inside. And as they rolled their way in towards the S's, did one of them back out, or was it the case they went side by side through? Well, they went side by side under braking, but to be fair to Brett, he gave Brett the space, and Peter Brett gained the place. They're very respectful racing between the two of them, and whilst they may only be battling for P27, it's still battling all the same, and that's what we love to see as they make the way through. But Bratz goes a little bit wide there and will lose some momentum on his rival as he brings himself back up to speed. But meanwhile, further back, we can see that Luke Garth from Half Fast Racing, having had that difficult start, has moved up to P31. He's just passed Lewis Ogitsu, the Half Fast Gaming driver, as they make their way out of the opening corner. And the American right now are chasing after guy. I believe they are teammates, in fact, and it is the case they're running under slightly different banners, but representing the Half Fast Gaming community. And right now, Ogitsu pressing on as he heads on down through the old hairpin. But as he does, we do look all the way back up to what is our battle for P16 and around, as we look to Michael Races here, and we can see he is in that P16 position trying to chase after Sharp and McKellar as they make the way down through the corner. But meanwhile, we see Leighton Austin here in that P17 position, and there's a bit of contact there between himself and Christoph Samin, and these two, no rivals to shedding paint. You think they're racing in touring car with the amount of door rubbing they're making, and do keep in mind, of course, touring car does race at Donington Park. If anybody in particular does remember, one Tarquini putting the car on 2 wheels now for Romeo 155 through the chicane. But it is the case, we're not in touring cars here today, we're in GT3s, particularly the BMW M4 GT3, and Leighton Austin right now having to make his GT3 as wide as humanly possible as they roll their way down the hill. And as they head on down, you can see, we look from the rear wing here of Leighton Austin's car, it is the case he has 2 very frantic DC-Simracing drivers behind who are looking to try and get the move, and Austin goes a little bit deep there. That's going to open up an opportunity to Samin, but he can't get fully alongside. But as they head through turn number 6 here, they head into McLean's, and a move is made around the outside. It's an attempt at a cutback, and there's a little bit of contact there, but Samin keeps it together. Austin keeps it together. Oh, goodness me! And Leighton Austin is sent off circuit there. Well, it is the case, we've lost Leighton Austin, and there he is. He went into the tyre barrier and returns to the circuit, but there was contact between the two of them, and I think as Leighton Austin tried to come across the cover of Christoph Samin, in the end it was the case that Samin was there and Austin has made the contact. Well, that's going to be one for the stewards to definitely dissect, but that was very unfortunate for the pair of them, and Leighton Austin has lost out massively. The Quantum Racing team driver, I think, won't be too pleased with that, and he might be on the radio to the team manager already for that to be recorded for post-race. But as they make the way on down here, we look to Juice Lune. Oh, goodness me. And that is Stephen Bain, who's got it very, very wrong under braking by the looks of things into the Melbourne hairpin. He rallycrosses his way back onto the circuit, where he hasn't considered a career in rallycross on the sim racing graft. He may want to do so because that was very well returned to the circuit, has to be said. But Stephen Bain, I think, getting it wrong under braking, and the car just being pulled off circuit. That's the front left wheel on the grass, and that's what's led to it going off. But he does return right now, and as he does, the battles outside the top 20 seem to only want to intensifying more as the racing carries on. But going back inside the top 20, we do look to Michael Keller here, the Wild Things Racing driver, and the American right now in P14, chasing after Christopher Kling and the Swede as they make the way up the hill in towards what is the McLean's curve there. You can see he's got more pressure behind him from Kieran Sharp. Then he has got the ability to put pressure on the driver in front, and the Sim Racing Collective driver here, Kieran Sharp, definitely trying to get a move on as they make the way through turn number 8 and down towards the S's they roll. But as they do, this is where Sharp loses the ground here. It does seem as though Sharp's been WM4 more tuned for handling and downforce compared to straight line speed, whereas it would seem as though Keller has got a little bit more straight line speed, or at least accelerational advantage, as they head through the S's and down towards the braking zone for Melbourne. But as they roll into that braking zone, this is where Sharp will gain. He gains in these lower speed corners where he's able to exploit the brakes, where he's able to have more confidence and get on the power early. But this back and forth between the drivers makes its way to the final corner, and there's no change at the moment as we're hearing that Pascal De Luca and Alex Rogers, they have dropped to P10 and P11 respectively, and Quinton Silva's moved up to P9. There's been some sort of incident off camera we haven't been able to see, but right now Kieran Sharp chasing after his rival in front and no way through for the time. But we do look from them to the drivers we're just talking about, and that's Pascal De Luca in particular, who in fact moved up to P10. I think it may be the case that he's gained the place on Alex Rogers, but definitely these two have been in some sort of confrontation, because earlier on they were running in P5, P6 respectively. They're now P10, P11. I think there's been contact between the two of them. They've both gone off circuit and they've had to bring it back together, and that really does now promote and open the door up to a lot of other drivers battling into the top field. And in particular, we do look to Yannick Kurtz here as we see the DC-Simracing driver, the Dutchman, in that P5 position, 8 seconds off of Karpinen, but he is looking good as he rolls his way through the S's, and he's got his teammate Menno van der Molen in P6, and DC-Simracing have been given a major opportunity. Can they exploit it? That's the question. But do keep in mind, of course, S4lt Community Racing have 3 drivers in the top 5 from P2 to P4, but we do cut to Simon Ramsay here, who's just made the move on Menno van der Molen for P6, and as they make their way down towards the final corner, let's take a look back at how it happened. Well, it was in the run down towards the S's here, and our focus is on Simon Ramsay, the SOP esports driver, as he rolls his way for the S's. In fact, Van der Molen getting it wrong there coming through the S's, taking too much of the second apex curve. He went defensive on his return to try and hold the position, but in the end, Simon Ramsay carrying that momentum through and saying, well, if you can't get it right, I will, and I'll take the place off you, thank you very much. And Ramsay continues to gain ground. He's now up to P6, having started outside the top 10. He's the driver who's gained some of the most places out of everybody so far, and he presses on, now chasing after Yannick Kurtz, who is 3.1 seconds up the road. But we look to Menno van der Molen here as they head on through what is Starkey's Bridge and up towards McLean's, and as they do, we're almost at the end of the first half an hour. And to give you a weather update, it's cloud all the way for the next 30 minutes on the forecast. Track temperature up to a nice crispy 28 degrees centigrade, 21 degree ambient temperature. It is 25 to 2 local time right now in the afternoon, and we would expect that ambient will slowly drop if it does at all, and the track temperature will stay about the same. As we do get there, a blue flag waved right in front of the cameraman's face. I think our cameraman might need to reposition himself rather than stand where he is there in the run to the S's, but of course that's the cameraman's job, not ours. And as they make their way down towards Melbourne, it is the case of Menno van der Molen holding on right now as Volkan Bakiridan, who, remember, started well inside the top 10. He's had to fight his way back up into this P8 position and is continuing to charge up through the order as aggressively as he can. But the American driver here, and the Rapid Drivers Club driver, knowing that RDC needs some major points today, and he can't afford to drop outside the top 10 again. He can't afford to be involved in an instant, as otherwise it will be a mortal blow to their aspirations here today. As meanwhile, a bit further back, we do see Tom Davidson there in P12, another one of the RDC drivers who was inside that top 10 at one point. He's dropped back to P12, but Davidson, to be fair, has been right in the thick of the battling, and his teammate Christopher Kling behind him, P13, does seem to be now starting to act as a little bit of a cork in the bottle, as we like to say, whereby the Swede is holding the drivers behind that bay and pushing them together. And in particular, Michael Keller and Kieran Sharp continue to battle for P14 behind. They're battling in that position for Wild Things Racing versus the Sim Racing Collective. It's got a bit of dust there being kicked up off of the exit, the old hairpin. I think somebody's run slightly wide, but that's been the case for a number of laps now. We've had somebody do a little bit of a run wide, but as we watch our drivers make their way up the hill, Keller here holding firmly onto that P14 for now, but I wonder how long it'll be before either Sharp makes a move on him or Races tries to make a move on the pair of them as they make their way into Coppice. as they head on through this time. Now, in terms of strategies, of course, with the pit window only 1 minute or so away from opening, we'll keep our eyes on who comes in first, but we are seeing that Teemu Karppinen here has gained a place on Samir Foch. Now, he's made the move on the exit of Melbourne. I think this is a sign of what we were talking about earlier from the SORT community. I think Karppinen and Geert Fischer are both running less fuel compared to Foch, and also what is Alex Rogers, and I think it is the case right now. They're splitting the strategies to see whether they can get all 4 drivers to finish inside that top 5, but that is a sign of what's coming. I imagine that very soon Karppinen and Fischer will be coming in when that pit window opens. Meanwhile, Foch may stay out for a long period of time and simply coast the car for at least the opening 15 minutes, if not 20 to 25 minutes, that pit window, so that way he's the last to pit, and if he can do so, that will give him track position authority come his pit stop, of course. Now, what do we mean by track position authority, I hear you ask? Well, the idea is, of course, when you come into the pit, you're meant to drop down the order, given the fact that you spend time in the pit, you're stationary, and also you're slow entering and exiting the pit lane. So if you come in first and you're the very first driver to pit from, say, the lead of the race, you drop down through the order, everybody else stays out on circuit. The problem with that is, if you come out behind a load of drivers who are battling for position, they don't have to give place to you because you're all battling for track position. So you lose authority to be leading in that group, you've got to fight to lead. Meanwhile, if you stay out as long as possible, if somebody comes up behind you, you can make the choice. Do you battle with them, or do you decide to let them go? And if you're right up the front, such as Harry Phillips, Geert Fischer, Karppinen, or Foch, the fact that you're right up here right now means you can afford to pit later than everybody else, because you don't need to try and jump ahead of people. You don't need to try and do what we call an undercut, is where you pit before your rival in that battle in order to try and find some clear space out on circuit and then gain the lap time. But we see here our 2 SORT Community Racing drivers stay on out as we do look to Yannick Kurtz here. And will we see something different from the DC-Simracing driver? It is quite a fast pit stop time here, to be fair. We have a short pit entry and a short pit exit compared to Kyalami, where it's a very long pit lane and quite an extended pit exit by comparison, but nobody daring to come on in right now. And Simon Ramsay here in P6, well, I think he will be the driver in this group who will pit last in that battle for P6, because if he pits first, he's going to lose the right to lead this group. Meanwhile, Menno van der Molen, Bakiridan, Sil or DeLuca may need to think about when they pit. And remember, we need to keep our eyes on the SOP esports drivers in particular, because their team manager Simon Bagg has told us before the race in the pit lane, it is the case they're running a different strategy here today compared to what they think everyone else will be doing. And I wonder whether that is stay out for the entirety of the pit window, i.e. stay out and pit on that final possible lap to hold authority. Because the thing with Donington Park we have seen so far, and it is a fact around here, whether it's in British GT, in real world, alternatively in series on Assetto Corsa Competizione like this, it is the case that overtaking is possible, but it costs a lot of time and it can put a lot of wear into the car, and that is going to be on the minds of a lot of drivers. Unless we just see everybody stay out, of course, then that will really make this pit window an odd one, because if we see everybody go late, then it's the case everybody goes at the same time and it'll be a battle on the pit crews, as we see Ramsay here breaking away from van der Molen after van der Molen's mistake earlier in this lap. And right now Menno van der Molen has to worry about Volkan Bakiridan closing up, and as they make their way out of the penultimate corner here, it is the case Bakiridan creeping closer as they head up towards the final corner. Will we see a pit stop? Yeah, I can tell you we are seeing 2 pit stops at the moment. Jonathan Reed and Stephen Bain in. And they're towards the back of the field, to be fair. They're in the pit lane currently as I look out my commentary box window, and they'll shortly be leaving the pit lane. Well, in fact, they've just left it. That's Jonathan Reed, and we've also got Christopher Gedman into the pit, and Callum Conde, I believe, is still out. They might be making his way into the pit shortly. And also a way to tell if somebody's pitted on the timing tower on the left-hand side, folks, is the case if you see a green slash between the driver's door number and their time gap to the next driver in front of them, it'll be a green slash, and then it will be the case they've pitted. Whereas if it's orange with a number 1 inside, that means they've still got a mandatory pit stop outstanding, and it is of course 1 mandatory pit stop. But we're not seeing anything at the moment with regards to those pit stops kicking off. We are still waiting, and we do look to our race leader right now, Harry Phillips, and what will he do is the question. Remember, at Kyalami, he intentionally, when did Wild Things Racing, intentionally underfueled the car, so he pitted early. He pitted after 30 minutes, and after we've pitted after 35 minutes really, after he gained the lead off of Geert Fischer to try and then run away with things, and Fischer caught up towards the end. Are we going to see that again today, or is Harry Phillips this time in the lead based on equivalent fuel and it's just the pace in the car? We will have to wait and find out. But as he makes his way through that, and we see coming out the pits very gradually, that's Christopher Gedman in P34, and the FRL driver here, well, he's not having a day of battling as such, but still he's battling to stay in this race. He's doing a good job, to be fair, the number 979 driver, and he'll want to bring the car home as a little bit of team pride. He does have coming up behind him there, that is of course Geert Geert Fischer, and there will be some blue flags waving very shortly. But unlike Formula 1, where the blue flags mean that you have to get out of the way immediately, it is the case that you have to respect a driver on a lead lap is coming through behind you, and therefore you're not to battle with them. It's the responsibility of the lead lap driver to find the safe way through, and you, as the driver a lap down, have to respond in a safe manner. You can choose to pull out the way, of course, but it's not as though you have to get out the way immediately. And speaking of getting out the way, well, we do have Pascal De Luca into the pits here as our cameraman very gently pans around here. He's coming in from what was at the time inside the top 10, and he's dropping a long way down the order, and this is where we now start to see how the pit stop really affects drivers here. We'll wait to find out where De Luca comes back out, because that could be telling if he comes out in clear track. But we look in the meantime to the battle for what is P7. Menno van der Molen versus this man, Volkan Bakiridan, who's regained his place up to P8. And the Rapid Drivers Club driver right now continue to push on here as they roll the way into the S's for the 24th time of asking. But as they do, with this very fast lap at Donington coming in just under 1.5 minutes, I can tell you it is the case that our leaders, our top 5, in fact our top 6, all lapping in the 27s. Everybody else at this time lapping in the 28s or higher, although I say that, and then Alex Rogers lapping quite fast. As meanwhile, we see that Team Karpinen and Semmer Foch here have exchanged places. Well, they did exchange places a little while ago, and I wonder if there was a mistake there for Karpinen, who goes a bit deep into turn number 1, and in fact 2 teammates battling here, and Foch gets ahead. And I think it may be the case that Karpinen has just become a little bit unsettled, and I wonder whether the wheels are slightly falling off the bus here for the SOP Community Racing team as they've exchanged the places, and perhaps Karpinen is struggling at this point in the race. But into the pits as well, I see is Michael Races, also Tim Troquet's in. But the question is, of course, where has our SOP Motorsport driver of Pascal De Luca come out? Well, here he is, and he's come out in P30, the lead driver of all of our drivers who have pitted so far, and he has found himself at clear track. He has got 2.5 seconds to Luke Gar in front, but the thing is, with that clear track, and Gar is battling with our Gitsu, but to be fair, our Gitsu is some way up the road. You can imagine that Pascal De Luca here will be very happy to afford himself clear track, and in fact, that's Harry Phillips just lapping Luke Gar here. So that just goes to show you how the fact that De Luca in that pit stop has dropped so far down the race time order, but when everybody else pits, of course, he's expected to move back on up, as I believe that's going to be Luke Gar into the pits. He is indeed into the pits, and this will mean that De Luca does not have any obstruction, and in fact he's got clear track in front of him now all the way round, minus of course Harry Phillips in front, but Phillips is the faster of the 2 drivers, and therefore De Luca is going to gain massively. He moves up to P27, and as he does, and as our timing tower continues to be updated there, it does take a little bit of time because it's based on sector times rather than live timings. Pascal De Luca right now is the driver to watch out for. I do believe that SOP Esports have nailed his pit stop, and they've got him some way up the order. And we've also had into the pits Jonathan Reed, of course, the SOP Esports driver here, P30. He's come out behind what is, I do believe, that's why the DC-Simracing driver, I think that may actually be Yannick Kurtz, who's on the lead lap. But Jonathan Reed has come out in P30, and he has jumped ahead of Alex Curto and also Stephen Bain and also Gedman Conde there, but he hasn't gained on Michael Race and Tim Troquet, and in fact he rolls his way on through here. I think what SOP Esports' goal is to pit earlier than most rather than late, as meanwhile into the pits is also Volkan Bakiridan, and he's made his way in as our cameraman just pans on round here, and the Rapid Drivers Club driver has come on in from what was P8, and he comes off the jacks. He goes again and makes his way on out here. I don't think he's taken on fuel. That was quite a quick stop, to be fair, and behind him that is I believe number 161 driver there. That is Luke Gar, who's coming in not a lap down effectively, not surely, but regardless, Bakiridan coming in front. I think in fact Luke Gar is a lap down there on Bakiridan, who makes his way back out in P24. But it does seem as though when you pit, you do fall almost half a lap, if not almost 3/4 a lap behind your foes, and if you can get clear track like Volkan Bakiridan has done, then it could work on out. As we've also got Mudd into the pit. That is, I believe, Matthew Mudd coming on in as the cameraman takes a look. And we do see SOP Motorsport Esports Team TV there clarifying in the YouTube chat that Jonathan Reed and also Peter Brett both involved in incidents, so uncharacteristically outside the top 20 indeed. We have seen some of those incidents, and 2 pitted, 2 staying out. We'll see how it plays out. Well, thank you for the update there, SOP Motorsport, and we do wait to see how it plays out for your team. But meanwhile, speaking of a team who are also worried about how it plays out, I do think the Sim Racing Collective right now need to make a decision soon on what they do in this situation for Kieran Sharp. He's been behind behind Michael Keller now for the best part of the last 10 laps. He's been stuck between Keller and Christoph Samin behind. He's not gaining, he's not losing, but does he throw caution to the wind? Does he decide to go for a strategic gamble and go into the pits whereas they stay on out, or is he trying to outlast them out on circuit here in the number 23 car? That will be the question that only he can answer, but I think at the moment either Sharp or Samin will need to come in, and they can't afford to keep running behind Keller because the lap time is falling away behind Michael Keller, and in turn it does mean they're potentially losing out on opportunities come the end of the race, or at least the second stint, or they could be leapfrogged over that pit window. But as we still do have 51 minutes of racing to go, still 21 minutes in this pit window, it's still a lot to tell, but here's a big tell. Geert Fischer makes his way into the pits from second place here. Assetto Community Racing now start to reveal their hand. Have they got a whole collection of aces in their hand? That's the question. Well, Geert Fischer comes on in here, and I think this confirms that they fueled the car light for the opening stint. Harry Phillips has stayed on out, but this will promote, of course, Samuel Foch and also Karpinen into P2, P3 respectively as they roll their way down through the Craner curves once more. And as they come on down here, it is the case that Fischer will be hoping he can come out and clear track in order to then be able to jump back up and put that pressure on Harry Phillips. Of course, that will mean that Wild Things Racing have to think about how they respond. Do they react specifically to Fischer, or do they wait until Foch and Karpinen reveal their move? Of course, we had to wonder what fuel Harry Phillips is running, given the fact that his lap times have been a mixture of low 27s and high 26s. In fact, he holds the fastest lap of this race, Harry Phillips. You can see they're given the purple alongside his position number on the time in town, the top right corner of your screen. That is the case that shows he is the driver with the fastest lap at this point, a 26.762, and the only driver to set a 26 in this race so far. I think Harry Phillips may be due a pit stop soon, and when he does, will that pit stop potentially see him drop out behind Fischer or still in front of Geert Fischer? And speaking of Geert Fischer, where has the second place driver coming out? Well, he's come out in P18, and in terms of space on circuit as he makes his way underneath Starkey's Bridge, it is the case he's not clear. He does have in front of him, that is Elias Anderson, as he makes his way out to turn number 7, and Anderson just in front, the RIP Racing Club driver here, rolling his way through the right-hander, and as he does, it is the case, in fact, between them, that is a driver who's a lap down, as I'm to understand it, and that is one of the half-fast gamers. But as they make one down here, Elias Anderson's not too far up the road. We've got a drive-through penalty for Peter Brett, and I believe that's from the automated track limit stewarding system, where he's been adjudged to have had 4 track limit breaches where he's gained time. So Peter Brett has a drive-through penalty, and that means Brett's race is in the disaster zone. In the fact that as we see Jukes Luna making his way at the inside and Peter Brett just behind, Peter Brett right now will have to come into the pits and spend time in the pits, and then he'll have to go back out and come in for his actual stop later, or do it the other way around. He can't have his pit stop and the drive-through penalty simultaneously. He has to come into the pits twice, and that will cost him significant time here. And as he makes his way on around, he'll do one of the two this time around as he creeps his way into the pit lane there with that pit limiter speed of what is 50. But as they make the way on down, it is the case that we do have Samir Foch. Now Foch has cleared his pit stop, and he's with Harry Phillips, and this is the revelation here in the fact, look at this as they make the way for the old hairpin, and oh goodness me, there's contact between Foch and Phillips as they came through the old hairpin, and this is going to massively open up things now for Assetto Community Racing. They wouldn't have wanted it to happen like that. We take a look back. As they make the way through turn number 1, where it was the case that Foch came out ahead of Harry Phillips. He went defensive into 1, but as they made the way down the hill here through the Craner curves, Foch went defensive through 3 and into the old hairpin. And as they came on through here, this camera angle might give us a bit more of a sign, and Phillips there, it was close between them, but just a tiny bit of contact between the two. I've seen Phillips pointing the wrong way and Samir Foch going on. And I think what Foch would argue there is, I couldn't go anywhere else. What Phillips would argue, of course, is, well, he turned me on the corner, but it is a case of a very close one there. And well, we can see Samir Foch slowing down, and I think yielding to give the place back to Harry Phillips, and that will be appreciated, of course, by the stewards in terms of the fact that Samir Foch has sacrificed the time he has gained, but both drivers there have lost out. But for Samir Foch, in fact, he hasn't really lost out too much, given the fact there is Geert Fischer, who right now rolls his way through the Goddard's hairpin, and Harry Phillips, if we're to believe that things will go back to how they were, i.e. Phillips, Fischer and Bosch are your lead runners when all the pit stops are done. This means that right now Harry Phillips is still leading come the end of all the pit stops, but his advantage has been slashed, and SOP Community Racing are now really nipping on his heels. But we've also got, and I believe we've also got some Ramsay who just recently came out of the pits. In fact, if he's not coming out of the pits here, then he's disappeared from our camera. In fact, he does creep his way out of the pits there. Goodness me, cameraman, you might want to get some oil or WD-40 on that camera because it takes forever to turn. It is the case that the SOP Motorsport driver here, well, he pitted from what was P6 at the time, and he makes his way back out ahead of what I believe is Pascal De Luca there. And SOP Esports have got two drivers now running together, De Luca and Ramsay, and this could work wonders for them. It's not worked out for Peter Brett, but it has worked out for Ramsay and De Luca by the looks of things. And right now they're looking potentially at P5, P6, if not P4, P5, as they head through the old hairpin. But as they do, it is the case. We look to our pit stop times here, and a lot of our teams running pit stops of length of about 23 seconds, and that would mean they're just putting fuel in the car. They're not changing the tyres, but it does seem as though a lot of these pit stops at the moment before the halfway point of the pit window go to show that a lot of teams lightly fueled the car for the opening stint, and now they've put more fuel in the car as they head into the second stint. But we'll have to wait and see. But meanwhile, we've also got into the pits Peter Brett for his pit stop now. He's coming in a second time, and he is taking that pit stop after his drive through on his first visit. But we do look from them to Menno van der Molen, who's into the pit, as the cameraman once again turns around for the DC-Simracing driver. And we've also got Quinton still into the pit, and this will release the likes of Harry Phillips, who has got behind him, and I do believe that's one of the SOP Motorsport drivers who may be a lap down at the moment. In fact, they are a lap down, and Harry Phillips has found his way on through, and the SOP Motorsport driver, they're not wanting to back off, wanting to stay with, and you can understand why, of course, because of that momentum. I believe that is, in fact, that is a Brett in as they make their way through Peter Brett, and as they head up the hill here, well, I think now Geert Fischer is going to be feeling a little bit of pain being stuck behind the SOP Esports driver. In the end, the number 102 driver gives him the space on the inside into McLean's corner. It wasn't the cleanest to let through, but it's been done, and as they make the way through Coppice, it is the case that Geert Fischer goes chasing after Harry Phillips once again. The gap between them just over a second as they head down the back straight. But of course, as this race now moves beyond its halfway point, it is the case we take a look at the weather card in the top right corner, and the weather card radar says in the next 30 minutes it's cloud all the way, and we still have that ambient temperature 21 degrees centigrade, a track temperature 28 degrees centigrade. No change in the weather conditions, not really any wind here today either. The wind, in fact, has really died down. It's almost stationary right now. I'm not even getting a breeze in the commentary booth, but it is the case that Geert Fischer is not worried about the breeze. It's the case it's not going to be a simple and straightforward breeze past Harry Phillips. It's going to be a battle all the way to the finish, but he is closing on the Wild Things Racing driver. It's the SOP Community Racing driver, and it is heading his way, or at least he'd think so. Of course, catching is one thing, passing is another, and we'll have to wait and see how it plays up between the pair of them. We've got Yannick Kurtz into the pit lane, also Ian Hall in, Leighton Austin into the pits. All these pit stops are continuing to play on through, and well, we'll have to wait and see as we see some Ramsay here. And is that Quinton Sill? That is Quinton Sill ahead of him. Well, Quinton Sill, after his pit stop, has come out ahead of Ramsay and De Luca. Well, now that is a surprise, and well, for SOP Esports it's not a welcome one, but for Wild Things Racing right now it's a welcome one to be sure. They've come out behind Menno van der Molen just about, but that's critical. They've come ahead of Ian Hall and Tom Davidson as we've got a drive. Oh, goodness me, and a drive-through penalty for Geert Fischer there, and that is for track limits as we're to understand it. The automated steward has awarded a drive-through penalty for Geert Fischer, and that is bad news for SOP Community Racing. The drama goes up another notch here, and that will relieve Harry Phillips massively. He will feel as though now he's been given the biggest breather he could ask for after that contact with Samir Foch, and well, now everything opens up, and Wild Things Racing here could be looking at least 2, if not 3 drivers inside the top 10 should we see Michael Keller also get into that fight, albeit this case that Michael Keller right now is in P4. He's yet to pit when as they make their way around. Kieran Sharp has decided to finally come on in, but the driver who was behind Kieran Sharp and has come out a little bit further behind with the focus of our cameraman's attention right now is Christoph Samin, who decided to pull the trigger first on those pit stops out of that battle, that freeway battle for what was at the time P12 out on the circuit. Samin, who was running in P14, he'd come back out in P20, and the DC-Simracing driver now makes his way through the S's here, tucked in behind one of our SOP Community Racing drivers, who is, I believe, a lap up. That is the number, unless I'm mistaken, the 817 driver, Timu Karpinen, and the Finnish driver here, of course, leading, has the authority over the racing line. and as he makes his way up towards turn number 12, it is the case that Karapinen has yet to pit, and I think his mandate now is to go as long as possible until they feel as though Harry Phillips is starting to gain on Karapinen, and he stays out once more as Christoph Semin here heads on through onto another lap as they roll their way onto their respective next lap. It is the case, 42 minutes still in this race. And we see just behind there, well, that's Kieran Sharp and the SimRacing Collective right now. Their hearts will have broken because they would have been hoping that they would have come out ahead of what was there, the DC-Simracing driver, but it's not worked out, and instead they have Christoph Samin, who's got back out ahead of them. Samin did the cool right, undercut Kieran Sharp and come out a place ahead, but they're still nose to tail here, and it could go either way as we've got a driver off circuit, and that, unless I'm very much mistaken, that's why the RP Racing Club drivers were just trying to figure out who that was, and we haven't quite got confirmation of who's just had that run wide, but it is the case of RP Racing Club there having a difficult moment. In fact, running wide once again, and we don't have confirmation of who it is. I think it might actually be Cam Conde who's had a run wide, but meanwhile we do have Harry Phillips getting in place as we hear that Brett Nandito has come into the pit. The Polish driver has made his way in from P4 out on circuit, but meanwhile we do look from Kieran Sharp to our race leader who's just in front of him, and well, Timo Karapinen here, he still has 11 minutes on the clock before his pits window closes, and he will effectively have his race result discounted if he doesn't pit there. He'll know when he's pitting as late as possible, I suspect, because he wants to have track position all the way to his pit stop, and therefore he needs to stay out. But the problem is here, he's caused a lot of traffic, so does he decide to deflect on into the pits? No, he stays on out, and I think this may be a bit of a disadvantageous call here, because whilst those blue flags will wave and the likes of the FRL driver in front will be required to yield eventually, or not battle, we could say, it is the case that Karapinen here will still potentially lose some time should he catch up to the drivers in front, particularly through the middle of a corner, such as in the run through the old hairpin and up towards McLean's, alternatively through the S's and down towards Melbourne. He could lose some time, and this could be a bad call. We'll have to wait and see as he heads on through here under Starkey's Bridge, and now making his way all the way up to and through what is McLean's Curve. But as he heads through turn number 7 here and has to deal with the traffic that lies in wait, it is the case that we look from our race leader to second place driver Alex Rogers, also the SOP community driver here, who's only just making his way through the old hairpin now, and of course the split on strategies, and also the incident he was involved in early, as we understand it, with one of the SOP Esports drivers, which dropped him outside the top 10 temporarily. It is the case now, Rogers here really staying on out to hold track position. He's yet to pit as well as he makes his way on around. And as to the question there from Frank Lucid, did we see what happened to Bakiridan, the Rapid Drivers Club driver who was in the top 10 before? We did briefly see what happened. There were some incidents on the opening lap, and here's Bakiridan right now down in P29, and I believe he is at this time chasing after Jonathan Reed. In front of him, that's Michael Keller, who's yet to pit, and Michael Keller's on the lead lap and has lapped Bakiridan, but he was involved in a shunt or two on the opening lap, which saw him do a bit of rally cross into the old hairpin, and then after that, I think it was the case that he came through the S's here, yes. And when he came through the S's on lap number 3, the car became unstabilised and he went sideways on the apex here and dropped outside the top 10, fought his way back up to P8, and now he's down here in P29. And in terms of his pit time, well, it is the case that it was a 23-second stop, so he may have had one or two other small incidents which have cost him further time here, but definitely out of sequence. And it is the case that the Rapid Drivers Club driver now trying to battle to get some more points on the board come the finish, and with the majority of the pit stops now complete, as Karapinen comes in, Alex Rogers stays out. As I look out my commentator box window, we've still got more pit stops on the horizon, but not many, and I think a lot of drivers here will be having to battle all the way through to the finish in terms of trying to get some more places come the end. But we do look here from one driver who's had a lot of misfortune today to a driver who right now has fortune on his side, and he also has a lot of pressure behind him, and that is Quinton Sill. And behind the Wild Things Racing driver, you guessed it, he's in P9, but you can see there the pink army of SOP Esports, and it's representing SOP Motorsport, of course, and that is Ramsay, Simon Ramsay and Pascal DeLuca, who is closing up, and they are putting some pressure on here. SOP Motorsport wants 2 drivers in the top 10 here at least, if they cannot get all 3 or all 4, and they're pressing on as they roll the way onto another lap. As they come out to the opening corner here and head down through the crane of curves and rolling on down here towards the old hairpin, it is the case that Quinton's still getting the better run, and it does seem as though Wild Things Racing have set their cars up to get the better exits out of the slow corners here by comparison with other drivers who've gone for a balance between the sweepers, such as the old hairpin and these last big corners, but it is the case, or at least on Quinton Sill's car, they've really focused on the second and third gear corners, and it's working out a treat for Quinton Sill. You can see, look at the gap he's opened up here. We also have to keep in mind that he doesn't have the problem of dirty air as he makes his way past there, one of the half-fast gaming drivers who leans aside, and as they make the way down the back straight here, Sill having had to come off that racing line slightly in exiting the corner. That's going to cost him some time. But speaking of one Wild Things Racing driver, we've got another one who's making his way into the pits, and that's Michael Keller from P3. But right now, Quinton Sill staying back from P2, we should say. But Quinton Sill under pressure here, coming down into Melbourne. He shuts the door, he squeezes it. But how much can you squeeze it when you've got Simon Ramsay getting his nose in there? That was very close between the two of them. And as they make the way up towards turn number 12, there's another drive-through penalty registered for Karapinen, and that's our Finn from S4lt Community Racing, who has picked up the drive-through, and that's a disaster for S4lt Community. Two of their drivers now have picked up drive-through penalties, and that is going to cost them severely as the Karapinen coming through. And perhaps it's not a drive-through for track limits, perhaps it's a drive-through there for speeding in the pit lane, because he's only just picked that up and only just been in the pit lane. But regardless, now that is a surprise and not a welcome one for S4lt Community Racing. But Quinton Sill in the meantime will take that and think, right, I'm going to gain another place at this rate. And as he rolls his way through the old hairpin, it is the case he holds on to P8 for now. But how long will it be before Ramsay and DeLuca find their way on alongside him once again? And Quinton Sill has definitely got the unenviable task here of holding two fast charges at bay, but to be fair, he's shown he can defend well so far as he makes his way up through turn number 8 through Coppice once again. And as they head on down, we do look to Simon Ramsay here, and we jump on board with the SOP Esports driver representing SOP Motorsport as the Irishman makes his way down towards the S's. But as he does, you'll see here how with this flowing sequence of left into right, this is where SOP Motorsport have really focused the attention of the car setup. As you can see, he's carrying a lot more speed through the corners, and as he makes his way down to the braking zone here for turn number 11, it is the case he can get close to the brakes, and again he's able to get his nose alongside temporarily in corner exit, but then he loses out. But I tell you one thing, with everything that's going on right now in the battles, and we've just seen this on the timing board, and also we've just had a note there from Colm Sinnott in the YouTube chat. It is true, Colm, you're right, because this man here, Michael Keller, who's just in front of Quinton Sill, believe it or not, when they all started coming to the pits, Michael Keller was outside the top 10 and battling for P12. He's jumped up to P7. He has had a quick stop. His pit stop, 13.5 seconds. They decided to stick all the fuel in Michael Keller's car, and he has made this work. It is the case. He had drama early on in the race, but that drama has subsided, and the number 8 driver has got out ahead of his teammate, and now he can go racing after Karapinen, who is in P6, having just taken his drive-through penalty. And this is really strong showing from Wild Things Racing, the fact they have got 3 drivers inside the top 10 right now. It is Harry Phillips who's leading, and then you've got Keller and Sill, P7, P8 respectively, as they make the way on up, and as they roll their way through Coppice and down towards the S's here. Now the question will be, can Quinton Sill keep the Pink Army at bay, or will it be the case that SOP Motorsport will go on to upset the Wild Things Racing party as they make their way down to the S's once again? But it's all Quinton Sill right now, you have to imagine, although Keller there I think cutting a bit too much of the apex of what is turn at number 10, and as they make their way down towards Melbourne once again, I think it's the sign that Ramsay is looking for that move. He's getting adventurous, and Keller here is actually running quite slowly on quarter exit. He lost a lot of speed going through the S's there, and now Quinton Sill will have to deal with his teammate being right in front of him. And I do wonder here where Wild Things Racing may try to swap the drivers around, but in a way that obstructs the road. Either they make themselves too wide coming into a narrow run, such as going in towards McLean's, and as they do so, they'll try and shut the door on Ramsay and DeLuca behind, because it's not looking good reading. If you're a Wild Things Racing driver right now and you're outside of the top 5, they've got a lot of drivers closing up, and you can see that's Pascal DeLuca running in P10, and as they make their way down and around through what is turn number 4, it is the case that not too far behind and closing. We saw him briefly there. That is Alex Rogers, 2.5 seconds back, and DeLuca doing everything he can right now to push the momentum here, because they will not want the S4lt Community Racing driver getting too close. As into the pits, the last of our drivers to take his mandatory stop, as we understand it, is Lewis Algitsu from P22. He's made his way on in eventually, and it is the case that pit window with 2.5 minutes left on the board is closing. But I can tell you what also is closing right now is the battle for P7, and Keller here really under major pressure. And you can see Quinton still taking a little bit of a peek as they roll the way into the S's this time around. 4 drivers separated by 1 second. That's how close it is between these 4 as they head on down. And here it comes from Ramsay as he looks at the move, but Quinton still covers off for his teammate here as they go defensive. Oh, goodness me, and Ramsay there parts the seas and goes between the 2 of them. Well, my goodness, Quinton still gains the place. Michael Keller goes off circuit and Ramsay and DeLuca make the move. And now Ramsay has to defend as his teammate... Oh, goodness me. And there's even more contact there, and well, it's the case that Quinton still is turned, and DeLuca has to go off circuit. And look at this, Tim Troket, also Tom Davidson and Alex Rogers all come up. My good lord, it's drama. We need to take a look back at that. Well, this was only moments ago, and we take a look at what's the helicam here, and well, as we flash back, so you could see as they made their way out of what was Coppice Corner, we focus in particular on Simon Ramsay, who was batting from that P9 position. Now, as they made the way into the S's and into turn number 9 in particular, this is where it went wrong. You can see Keller gets a ball run out of the corner, Quinton still as well, and Ramsay now looks at the move, but still covers him off here, and in fact, you can see Ramsay find there's space between the 2 of them, and Keller outbreaks himself into the corner, interestingly enough, and as they exit on out there, where it was actually very clean, there was no contact between them, and there's where the contact started. It was the case that DeLuca cut across, and in fact, we've run out of replay tape time there, unfortunately. We were trying to get it all the way back, but we couldn't, so we come back to live pictures now, but then it all kicked off at the corner we really wanted to see, but unfortunately, the replay tapes, those old VHS tapes, don't last that long anymore, and it is the case that now we look back to live pictures, and as they make the way on through, Alex Rogers now, well, I think he'll be figured after what. Oh, there's a knock to the back of Alex Rogers, and there's contact from Tom Davidson there. I think it might have been the case that there was multiple contacts in very quick succession. Alex Rogers being cooped up behind what was the Wild Things Racing. We'll say it was the Wild Things Racing trying. In return, there was an attack from Davidson. Davidson going slowly here. I think he's trying to yield the place back. He feels as though he's responsible for that contact, and that's fair from Tom Davidson. But as they make the way on through right now and down towards turn number 1, it has all gone wrong, and indeed, Jack Edwards saying there in the YouTube chat that could have gone so much more smoothly. Indeed it could have. I think everybody there will be thinking about how could we have done that a little bit better, but to be fair, Donington does bring out those moments, and well, that little battle that we did see in the Melbourne hairpin, now that was brilliant in terms of free wide and how we saw in particular Ramsay part the seas of the Wild Things Racing team, but then it all went wrong in the run to the final corner, but still that's the way it's been. And now we look back to what is our P6 driver here. Also, in fact, he's moved up to P5. He's gained the place of Menno van der Molen. It is Teemu Karpinen here, the Finn upper position as he makes his way through the S's here, and Menno van der Molen behind. Well, it says he's P5 there in the bottom right, but he has dropped to P6, I can confirm. And as they make the way through the first of the 2 final corner hairpins, it is the case of van der Molen staying in that P6. And I think we'll be thinking about how he can try and succeed in closing that position off, given the fact it would seem as though that Karpinen and also the drivers ahead have got a little bit more pace over him as this race wears on. But as they make the way down and around and on to another lap here, the leaders, head on to lap number 42. We look to Simon Ramsay here, who after all the drama at this corner only a lap ago, Ramsay in that P7 position. And then you can see there is Michael Keller, who after all of it running in P8, he's now in that position and having to hold off Troket as they make their way down towards turn number 1. And Tim Troket, they're looking aggressively on the inside, and as they roll the way through the right-hander of turn number 1 and down towards the old hairpin, it is the case that Keller now becoming the roadblock in the road. But to be fair, he's a strong driver. He knows how to defend well, but the problem he's got 2 drivers there who would love to take the move. And as we've said previously, that Tim Troket and indeed the guys at DC-Simracing, they're very patient hunters. They know what to watch out for, and when they see the opportunity, they analyse the driver in front. They will then go for it here. It's almost as if Troket is a bit of a computer in a way. He's doing everything. He's putting the calculations in, but he's waiting for the right formula to come out. But instead, it's the case he's going to have to worry there about Pascal DeLuca, who looks at a move, but the Irishman not able to find the move this time, and in fact has to back out on the run through Coppice here in that P10 position. The Irishman took a peek to the inside, but it wasn't enough. But meanwhile, Troket takes a peek to the inside into the S's, and he's not close enough. It was a feint. Can he get Keller to make a mistake? They know that Keller is quite weak for the S's. He struggled there in the past, and it's a drive through. Oh, goodness me, it's kicking off again, and Toluca into the wall there after hitting the second apex of the S's incorrectly, it would seem. The suspension kicked off, and it's a drive-through penalty for Michael Keller for cutting track limits at the S's. That's the fourth cut, and it's the case that the automated shooting system has been given him a drive-through penalty, and he makes his way in immediately. And Wildfix Racing, how it was going from good, it's now gone from good to bad to disastrous, and it's all on Harry Phillips and Quinton Seal now to keep the dream of being in the top 10 alive as they make the way on through. And well, Quinton Seal here, he's got Alex Rogers closing on him very quickly, and Alex Rogers doesn't need to be asked twice to close up a position as they make the way down through the crane of curves here, and as they head on down through turns 2 and 3, it is the case Rogers there cuts through the camera. Also just behind, I believe that is Christopher Kling, and the Swede is also trying to get on the mix here. It is hunting season if you want to try and capture a position of a Wildfix Racing driver, and Kling and Rogers know all about it. Tim Davidson just behind, sorry, not Tim Davidson, I keep calling him Tim, it's Tom Davidson. It is the case the Britain here for Rapid Drivers Club as he rolls his way through turn number 7. He's under pressure from Christoph Samin here, and as they make the way up the hill and in towards Coppice, it is the case there's no move this time, but Samin really started to eke that pressure on as they roll the way down through turn number 8 and on towards the S's, and Samin backs off for the time being. But as we ride on board the dashboard here of the Belgian, and hopefully just for a brief moment everything will calm down, because it is the case the last 15 minutes, and you're right to say that, SOP Motorsport, Esports TV and the YouTube chat, these last 15 minutes have been absolutely chaotic. And when we do enjoy action, we do enjoy a bit of chaos, but it's a bit chaotic too far. But as they make the way out to turn number 11, and my English starts to fall apart, my grammar starts to fall apart, it is the case that Christoph Samin makes his way up towards the final corner here and finds himself with 2 Rapid Drivers Club drivers, one of whom is keeping him at bay and the other seems to be falling back into this battle. That's Davidson in front of him, and ahead of Davidson is Kling as they make the way on to another lap. 26 minutes plus the final lap of this race still to go, and there's still plenty of places to be swapped and exchanged here. It's not over by any means, and this race is not going to go silently into the night as they make the way down towards the old hairpin once more. But as they do, to give you an update on those weather conditions, it's cloud all the way to the finish. No rain on the horizon, at least we're not expecting any rain. Track temperature is staying at a nice 28 degrees centigrade, ambient still at 21, and as they roll the way through, the wind is picking up very slightly, but it's a very light wind. It's not going to have too much of an effect on our drivers as they head on through the corners, whether it's at McLean's as they make the way through, all the way down at Gollard's, the final corner. But Samin gets a little bit too aggressive there on the run through McLean's, carries too much speed on quarter exit and runs wide, but he's not able to lose too much time there, in the fact that we can see that Davidson and Kling now starting to work their way around number 1 another, and as they make the way down and towards the S's this time, the problem is of course that Davidson here, he won't want to impede or hurt his teammate, and his teammate won't want to do the same. But I think Tom Davidson will feel as though he's the faster of the 2 of them, and here comes Christoph Samin. He looks up the inside into the Melbourne hairpin. It's a nose in on the rear quarter panel of Davidson, and the 2 drivers make the way out side by side. Now can Davidson hold on through Gollard's? That's the question as they roll the way through. Well, Samin's going to go round the outside here. It's brilliant stuff as they come out the final corner, and they still battle their way now down towards the timing line, and it is the case that our timing tower, and we see that Christoph Samin does cement the position. Christoph Samin there with a bold move into Melbourne, seals it through Gollard's around the outside, and now moves up into P12. He takes one of the Rapid Drivers Club drivers on successfully. Now can he make it 2 out of 2 as he chases down Christopher Kling for P11 with 24 minutes still on the clock. But as they roll the way on down towards what is turn number 4, it is the case of Christoph Samin doing everything he can in order to be able to press on. And meanwhile, we look a little bit further back towards Leighton Austin here, and well, the P18 driver right now finds himself caught between Keller and Redlandito, and of course Keller, with that drive-through penalty, has dropped back to P17 when he's coming out of the pits. Meanwhile, Leighton Austin here will see this as an opportunity, as will Redlandito, as they make the way on through. Oh, goodness me, Austin now. I thought there was going to be contact based on the camera angle, but as they make the way through McLean's, Keller's really under pressure now as they head up towards Coppice. It's side by side uphill into the braking zone, and Leighton Austin is sent wide there. Now, was there contact between the 2 of them? That's the question. I think there may have been, as Redlandito has gained the place off of the pair of them. Let's take a look back. Well, this was only moments to go, and we will ride on board for this from Redlandito's perspective, and the Rapid Drivers Club driver here will have a full view of the action. And what you can see here is they made the weapon to McLean's. Austin tried to go round the outside then to McLean's. He was never going to do it, but as they made the way out the corner, Keller made its way slightly over, and that's where the contact occurred there. A small tap, and in the end, Keller went deep under braking after the contact, and Retardito found the place. Well, he capitalised. It was a 2-for-1 special at Coppice, and he has sealed the deal. As we now return to those live pictures, he's up to P17 as they make the way on. But as they come charging down, in the meantime, we do look for the drivers here to a little bit further up the order, and in particular, in fact, we look further down the order firstly to Richard Pixley here, the last of the Wildfix racing drivers out of the circuit right now. We haven't really talked about Pixley since the start of this race, to be fair. He's battling with Bratz here as they make the way down towards Melbourne, and as they do behind him, that is Peter Brett, and it is a very tricky one to navigate here. Oh, goodness me, and Peter Brett in contact there with what was Bratz, and Pixley will take the place. Well, I think it is the case. That was unfortunate. I think 3 does not go to 2 nor into 1 there coming out of Melbourne, and in the end there was contact between Brett and Bratz, and Pixley has taken the place as a result. He's up to P25, but Peter Brett is right behind him and looking for that opportunity as they make the way on to another lap, and behind them we do have the DC-Simracing machines trying to press on as well, and I believe that is the number 998 car, that's in P4, and that is Yannick Kurtz, and behind Kurtz is the S4lt Community Racing driver of what is Team Karapinen there, who after his drive-through penalty is in P5 and going hunting, as we see that Menno van der Molen is into the pit lane for a second stop. Now that, I'm not sure what it's about as I look outside my commentary box window, but he's in. I wonder if there's a problem with the car that they've identified. Perhaps it was underfueled in the pits, but it is the case that van der Molen is going to drop down the order. He's going to drop a long way down the order with a pit stop, as it is the case that the drivers do lose quite a bit of time around here with the lap being so quick, but that is not a welcome surprise for anybody if you're in the DC-Simracing team, but to everyone else behind, I think a lot of drivers will be rubbing their hands together as they gain a place for free, but we'll have to wait to see how that affects van der Molen's race. As meanwhile, Yannick Kurtz here in P4, he won't be thinking about his teammate right now. You may have noticed it. He'll be thinking about the fact that he's got a very fast charge in Finn behind as they make the way down towards turn number 11, and Kurtz here having to defend on the inside into Melbourne, and as they roll their way out of the corner here, Yannick Kurtz holds onto the position for now. We look back from the DC-Simracing driver's car as they head into Goddard's. As they exit the corner, it is the case that Yannick Kurtz definitely making himself park the car on apex here and keep Karapinen at bay, and of course this will continue to open the gap to the top 3 of what is Fischer, Foch and Phillips there, who are 5.2 seconds and rising away. But as they make the way on through here, Yannick Kurtz definitely looking stable at the moment, but I do think that Karapinen here is thinking about where could he go for the move. Would he go for it in the old hairpin? No, he's not close enough to seize the opportunity out the inside, and to be fair, I think that would be a bit of a brutal run to the inside if he went for it, as they make the way on past there what is the last of our other last runners, and that, I believe, unless I'm mistaken, was Gedman, who was just putting off to the side in P34, and we have got Callum Conde in the pits, and I believe he may have retired from this race. They pulled the car on in, he's in P35 in the pits, and as we continue to watch this battle of P4, in this case, the Kurtz here gets a better run out of Coppice initially, but in the charge down towards the S's here, will see Karapinen close up? No, not too much to be fair. It was a relatively short run as straights go, but it is the case that he gets the run on the brakes, does Karapinen, but then it's a short run all the way out to Melbourne, and Kurtz is ahead enough here not to have to worry about going defensive this time around. But as we see them, they're coming up towards the back of the rear Wildfix racing machine there of what is Richard Pixley running P26, and will Pixley have something to say about this battle other than the blue flags that are coming his way? We see it's a drive-through penalty for Simon Ramsay. He has picked it up, and that is for a breach of track limits for the 4th time at what is the S's there. It's the case he's been adjudged by the automated steward, and the number 99 driver here in what was looking to be a strong performance to P6. It's all becoming undone as he makes his way through the left-hander of turn number 12 and into the pit lane, and Ramsay will be very frustrated about that as he makes his way on in. But as he does come on in here, it is the case at his detriment. That drive-through will reward other drivers with places, and in particular Alex Rogers here, after what was that difficult opening stint of his race, it's now coming back together. He's up to P8. His next target is Quinton still in what is P9, not P9, in P7 in front of him as they make their way down and through. But as they come charging on down the hill here and in towards turn and number 4 very shortly, in towards the old hairpin, it is against the S4lt Community driver here. Closed up very rapidly indeed, but as he rolls the way on through, he needs the time to pass right, because then he's only got 3.5 seconds to close to Troquet, who's in P6. Those places will come thick and fast, and at this rate, S4lt Community could still potentially realise that that opportunity of having 4 drivers finish inside the top 5, and if they were to do so, that would give them huge championship points here going into round number 3 in 2 weeks time at Mount Panorama. But as Rogers comes out of copies here, it is the case he's not able to get the move, or is he, as they roll the way on down in towards the braking zone there for the S's? No, he has to wait again, and Quinton still here will look to have to defend as much as possible, as we're hearing that Carapina's just made the move on Yannick Kurtz, and we stay focused here on the battle for P7 for now, but it's no change as they head through Melbourne. But meanwhile, Carapina has made the move for P4, but there is an attempt at a return pass here from Kurtz as they roll their way through Rockgate and down towards what is the old hairpin, but no such achievement so far for Yannick Kurtz. They head on down, and I think right now the DC-Simracing driver trying to seize that opportunity, and will to find it, he's going to have to extract a couple more attempts out of the car, because right now it's not there, and instead it looks like Carapina has found the measure of the Dutchman as they make their way up towards McLean's. As they head on through with Pixley ahead of them, and that being Richard Pixley, who is a lap off of them, so therefore will be required to respect them coming through, and Pixley does in fact decide to do a bit of rallycross in order to let the lead lap runners through, which is very kind of Pixley to do so. It is the case there. We can see Kurtz now falling away from Carapinen, and now it is one of situations whereby the Salt Racing community have P2, P3, P4 and P8. Can they potentially get Rogers into P5 come the finish? Well, if they're going to, they need to do it quickly, because only 16.5 minutes on the clock, and the time is ticking down. And speaking of Alex Rogers, here he is as he makes his way through what is there of Coppice Corner, and he's all over the back once again of Quinton Seals. We're hearing the number 45 car that Benedict Bratz, who was involved in that incident down at Melbourne in that battle earlier on with what was Peter Brett and also Richard Pixley. I can tell you he's just had an off-trackers at Bratz, and therefore he's dropped a bit further down to P28. And meanwhile, Alex Rogers here, well, he is just looking at the back of what is Quinton Seal, and in fact, as they make their way on through here, it is the case in this battle for P7. It says P7 at the bottom right. I can tell you it's actually he's in P8. We do seem to have some glitches of our timing boards at the moment today, but we'll keep you informed as much as we possibly can. Rogers here just keeping that pressure on all the same, and then in P9 here, trying to stay alive in that P9 battle, we've got Christoph Samin, and he has got the half-fast gaming driver there between him and P10, and that is Tom Davidson behind, and well, that is the P29 driver between them of Lewis Argitsu, who just continues to charge on. But these battles now calming down a little bit for the most part. We still do have some key battles to be resolved, but for the most part, we are seeing things now take a quieter tone as the race wears on to its final 15 minutes. And speaking of one driver right now who will not be looking to go quietly to the end of this race, he'll want to try and gain as many places as possible after that disaster start and what has been a very difficult race. Volkan Bakiridan here, the Rapid Drivers Club driver, is up to P21. He's chasing after Juice Luna with P20 there, and the Quantum Racing team driver in the number 37 car holding on right now as the Dutchman versus the American as they come to the end of their current lap. As they make their way on out there, we can see the word for the SOP Motorsport Esports TV team there in the YouTube chat saying, let's forget today ever happened. Well, sorry, let's forget today even happened. And well, here's the case. That has not been a happy day for SOP Motorsport. That is to be certain. But at the same time, of course, that's the way it goes in racing. Some days you're winning, some days you're losing. But I can imagine after the win at Kyalami for the SOP Motorsports team and a difficult day here today, they'll be bouncing back full momentum in 2 weeks' time at Bathurst, and do not count them out. They may have had difficulties at Donington Park, but it is the case they're a very capable outfit, and there's a reason why they're P2 in the standings going into tonight. As meanwhile we see here just Luna losing a little bit of momentum coming out of McLean's, but not enough to lose the position to Bakiridan as they roll their way through Coppice once again. But as we look from them all the way up to our fastest man on circuit, here he is, team with Carpinen right now, who has set the fastest lap of a 26.222, as we're hearing that Fischer and Foch have swapped places in P2, P3 respectively, and it is the case now their teammate Carpinen here trying to run away from Kurtz as they make their way down towards the S's, and Kurtz has got Troket behind, and in fact that's not Troket behind, that's the P24 driver behind what is Menno van der Molen, who's actually had an off-track recently. He's been involved in some sort of incident which has upset the car, and he's now having to try and keep Peter Brett behind him in this battle for P24. As you can see, van der Molen here going defensive versus Brett, the SOP Motorsport driver here, rolling their way through turn number 11, and as they do, well, it is the case they stay as they were, but Van der Molen really not liking this Donington Park circuit. Didn't like it qualifying, didn't like it at the start of the race, and it's coming back to pinch him even more as they make their way towards the end of this race. And I think he'll be wanting to forget this one after today, whereas his teammates may not be inclined to do so as much, as they seem to be having better fortune, particularly his teammate just in front of him of Yannick Kurtz, who's in P5. But as Van der Molen here holds off Peter Brent for the time being, we do have what is Matthew Mudd into the pit lane. He's coming in. I believe they are retiring the car in P34 alongside what is Conde. That is Callum Conde, P35, which is unfortunate. We do have 2 retirements in this race so far out of our 35 starters, but we still do have some time to see if there's any more last minute drama, any more last minute retirements, alternatively overtakes. And well, we don't want to put the commentator's curse on anyone, but I can tell you one driver right now who seems to have it all going his way after what was a big knock when he was battling with Samuel Foch into the old hairpin. Harry Phillips, the Wild Things Racing driver right now. He was leading out front at Kyalami for so long, only to be pipped to the post in the remaining 20 minutes by Geert Fischer from S4lt Community Racing. Well, today, he has a 17-second advantage over Geert Fischer, who you would think, if he had not picked up that drive-through penalty for track limits, Geert Fischer would be leading right now. But the fortunes have swung the other way, and Harry Phillips now just needs to bring it home. He can afford to lose a second, if not a second and a half a lap, in order to avoid any automated drive-through penalties being awarded. He just needs to keep it on the black stuff now, or within the track limits, and he will be bringing it home. Meanwhile, Geert Fischer here coming to the end of another lap. Here's the case, he's just ahead of his teammate Samuel Foch as they make the way onwards to what is the next lap, and as they roll the way on down here, it is the case the battle for the top 3 seems to have subsided. But meanwhile, behind, we see here in the battle for P7, it is still Quinton Seal, P7, holding off Alex Rogers, P8, the Wild Things Racing driver, frustrating the S4lt Community Racing driver for the time being. And as they make their way up towards the final corner, Rogers still not able to get close enough to make the move as we ride on board. And as he rolls his way out of the corner here, we see a bit of dust being kicked up by the driver in front of them. I do believe that might be Bratz, who's run a little bit wide there, but Alex Rogers now goes on to another lap. And for him, what can he do to make the move for P7? I think the thing is, for Alex Rogers, the lap is very smooth, to be fair, but what we're seeing still just seems to find a way to get the speed out the corner, so just carry a little bit more momentum compared to his rival, and that is where Rogers is just not able to keep the distance close, because he's able to stay as close as he is through some of the corners here. It would be the case that he may be able to make the moves. They head up towards McLean's here, the gap 4 attempts at this time, but then it starts to close together a little bit, and you can see that Alex Rogers getting a much better exit, and Quinton still really struggling for exit there at McLean's, and it's a mistake from Sill, which closes the pair back up. And now Alex Rogers gets very close to corner exit, and we do look to the exterior cameras here as they make the way down the back straight in towards the S's. And can Rogers get the better run through the S's to set himself up for the move in the run down towards Melbourne? Well, here they go through the chicane, and as they do through turns 9 and 10, it's looking even at the moment, although Rogers is starting to build that momentum. He looks to the inside, Sill covers off the middle of the road, but not all the way to the inside, and Rogers goes around the brakes. Oh, goodness me, Quinton Sill turns in. There's a whack between the 2 drivers there, as I think Sill was expecting Rogers to outbrake himself into the corner, but Rogers parked out very nicely, covers off the run to turn number 12, and Alex Rogers in the end gets that P7 all covered off and squared away come the end of this lap. But will it still be his by the run to turn 1? Well, it's looking as though it will be for the time being as they head on down towards the opening corner, and I think that is now P7 in the bag for Alex Rogers, unless he makes an uncharacteristic error over the next couple of corners. But the question is for him now, can he close down Troket, who is 6 seconds up the road in P6, and then there is a 20-second gap to Kurtz. Well, I do think that P7 may be the highest that Rogers can get here today, unless he's able to really close that gap down to Troket. And we look at the lap times for what is Tim Troket, and it is the case, his last lap at 27.5 versus Rogers' last lap at 27.9, but to be fair, he was battling. I would say Rogers will be lapping as fast as Troket, but I don't think he's got enough to bring that gap down rapidly enough here, so I think P7 may be all he can achieve, but he'll still be happy that he's made that move for P7 after so long running behind Quinton Sill. But meanwhile, we do look from them as they head down towards the S's once again to drivers a little bit further back down, and particularly Kieran Sharp in P11 here. He's chasing after Tom Davidson. He's 8 tenths off of the P10 driver, and the SimRacing Collective driver pressing on here as he rolls his way on through in the number 23 car. And I do believe he's the sole representative of SimRacing Collective here today, but still he's putting on a display for the team, and as he rolls his way on the outside looking for the cutback there at Melbourne versus Davidson, he gets Davidson to to go a bit deep on corner exit, and this could be the run he needs to try and go around the outside here into the final corner. It's going to be brave stuff. Now, will he commit to the outside? He does, but he goes very deep on the outside, and what he's trying to do there is set up the run to turn 1, but I think it is the case. In going so deep, he's cost himself a little bit of momentum. He wanted to try and get a bit of a later apex there rather than that U-shaped bend, and in the end the U-shaped bend has cost him the run to the corner. But Davidson does seem to be struggling a little bit with 8 minutes still on the clock plus the final lap. It does not seem to be the case that Davidson's able to keep sharp at bay without having to battle as they roll the way down the hill and in towards the old hairpin once again. Behind him is Christopher Kling, and the Rapid Drivers Club driver here, the Swede, will be egging Davidson on in terms of whispering underneath his helmet, "Go on, Davidson, you can hold on, keep going, Tom." But it is the case right now, Christopher Kling, if he can get into this fight, maybe he'll be able to get P11 off a sharp come the finish. You never know as they make the way on throw and up towards Coppice Bend. But as they do, Ramsay behind. He has got there. That's Bratz between the two of them. Bratz being what is a lap or two down. Benedict Bratz in P28, and Bratz moves aside there, as it is the case. Ramsay comes on through, chasing down Kling, but Kling being given a bit of respite as they make the way into the S's. But as they fly on through, we do look here from our P12 driver all the way back to what is our P21 driver, Volkan Bakiridan, and he continues to chase after Juice Luna with the time counting down. And these two, I think, running to a pace which would see them much higher up the order today if they hadn't been involved in incidents, particularly Bakiridan, but it has not gone the way of either driver. And as the number 18 driver makes his way out of McLean's and up towards Coppice here, he finds himself trying to get into the top 20 on the final few laps of the race. But can he do so with Juice Luna putting up a very solid defence? As they charge down the back straight this time around, there's no way for Bakiridan as they head in towards the braking zone. He's going to have to be patient and see what he can do later on in the lap, if at all on this lap now, as he heads down towards what is their hairpin. But as he rolls his way on down here, it is the case that no move available, too far back once again. But he is trying, I think, to get into Luna's head right now, trying to get Juice Luna to go a little bit deep into the corner to not get on the power as comfortably, but he's not been able to psych his opponent out at this time. It's the case they stay as they were as they make the way to the end of their current lap. I believe they now go on to lap number 57, much like our leaders already on that lap. And as they do, of course, we do look to our race leader here, and that is Harry Phillips, who having completed his 57th lap only moments ago. He just found his way past his teammate Michael Keller, who is a lap down on him, running just behind them. Michael Keller up to P18, and I think we've been hoping he would have been in the top 10, but of course that drive-through penalty scuppered his chances of doing so, and Harry Phillips now really just trying to bring this one to the finish with the advantage he has in his pocket as he makes his way on around and through at turn number 7 and up towards 8. But as he does so, it is the case that we do look from Harry Phillips here to our second place driver, Geert Fischer, who, as he rolls his way in towards what is there at McLean's corner, he is chasing after Phillips, but he's not gaining enough here. In fact, the gap is continuing to open up in Phillips' favour, and I think Fisher at this point is settling for P2, because to be fair, SORT Community Racing at P2, P3, P4 and P7 right now after this round, subject to stewards' inquiries, but I don't think they're going to cause too much of a disruption to the finishing order with regards to SORT Community Racing drivers. It will be the case that SORT Community Racing are going to really take a firm grip on the championship after the first 2 of 6 rounds here in the Community Super League Season 2, given the fact their performances in the first 2 rounds have been very strong. And meanwhile, speaking of strong here, it is the case of Volkan Bakiridan still battling for P21 versus Juice Luna, and as they exited Melbourne there, he got to the what was the inside to outside run to Gollards, and in the end he has made the move, he's made it stick, and he's up to P20 as he crosses the timeline, does a little bit of a weave there, and you can see Juice Luna in return doing a little bit of nose side to side weaving there, as if to say, you don't need to do this, I'm not close enough to make the move. But Bakiridan not taking any chances there from the Quantum Racing team driver. It is the case, he feels as though he should be a lot higher, and he wants that P20. I think he feels as though he's paid for that P20 in sweat and blood today. And as they make the way down for the old hairpin, is there anyone else he can catch with his next target? Matt Leyland, who we look to now, is 7.5 seconds up the road, and the RIP Racing Club driver, I think, is running comfortably here to the finish and will not be at threat from Bakiridan as this race comes to the close out. But as they make the way down and around, it is the situation that we do look here from Matt Leyland to our drivers a bit further up the order, and in particular we look to Alex Rogers here, who after clearing Quinton Sill, it is the case he now does have what is their Team Troquet a little bit further up the road, but the gap between the two of them is 4.5 seconds. Alex Rogers, to be fair, is stripping 0.6 of a second a lap out of Troquet, but I don't think he's got enough laps here. He'll have 2 more laps after this one, as we're to understand it, and therefore the time is running out. Unless Troquet makes a major error now, I think it is the case that P7 is the furthest he will go. As we say hello there to Michael Redford, who says, yay, I didn't miss all of it. Go RIP Racing Club. Well, it is the case that right now we'll come to RP Racing Club in a second, but Simon Ramsay there goes up the inside of Christopher Kling for P12, but Kling's going to come back at him here into Coppis as they make the way on through, but no change. How's the move done, I hear you ask? Let's take a look. Well, as they made their way down into the old hairpin here, you can see it is the case. Well, as they rolled the way through, Ramsay getting a better run, and Kling making an error coming out the corner, and as they rolled their way up the hill side by side, coming through Starkeys and up towards McLean, and a nice move there, very good commitment from Simon Ramsay to go to the inside of McLean's, feeling that Kling didn't have the momentum, and you can see Kling here trying to look to the inside, but Ramsay was never going to be outbroken into the Coppis corner, and that's how the number 99 driver gained the place. As we return to live pictures, he's up to P12, Kling down to P13, but meanwhile, we look to Michael Races here, the FRL Racing Team driver, and it has to be said about his race, it's P14, I think, where everything's played out, the incidents he's been involved in, the battles he's been involved in, he won't feel too upset about P14. I think he'll feel quite happy considering how everything's played on out as he makes his way on down. And a bit further back, we do have Ian Hall here from Quantum Racing Team, who is gradually closing races down. We're 2 minutes on the clock. I don't think he's got enough time to do it, but as they make the way on out here, it is the case that those battles are continuing to quiet down. We haven't really got any major battles outstanding now. The only real one left to be resolved is Kieran Sharp in P11 here for the Sim Racing Collective, chasing after Davidson for P10, and of course that's Tom Davidson from the Rapid Drivers Club. 1.5 minutes on the clock by the time they get to the S's. We haven't got long left. No additional weather in the forecast. It's cloud all the way to the end. The weather is not going to change, and well, it is the case after the rain that was on the circuit at the start of qualifying. Indeed, it was raining briefly in the opening minutes of qualifying. It has been a very stable weather race, to be fair, but that's the British weather for you. It's very unpredictable, and Donington Park being right in the heart of England and Leicestershire, it is the case that rain just has not really materialised. I think some drivers might have been banking on it, others will be very glad it hasn't come, but Kieran Sharp right now won't be thinking about that. All he'll be thinking about is how can I beat Davidson to P10. Well, to do so, he's got to try and get Davidson to make a mistake, because I think Davidson right now has got it all hooked up and will be finishing the last of our top 10 finishers as they make the way. What for them, we do believe will be their penultimate lap, given the fact that Harry Phillips here making his way down towards what is Melbourne, and therefore he will take our drivers onto what is a 60-second and final lap in short order. But we look from our leader to our P3 driver here, Samuel Foch, and the SOP Community driver, the SOP Racing Community driver. To be fair, I was at contact with Phillips and respectfully giving the place back. It is the case that Foch has definitely been working hard on this one, and it hasn't quite been the way he's wanted it to be, but he still made it work as the leader goes on to the final lap, and Yannick Kurtz here finds himself in a bit of a battle in front of him, and I do believe, unless I'm mistaken, that is Gedman versus one of the RIP Racing Club drivers, albeit I think they're on different laps, the two drivers here, as they roll the way on through, and that's the number 42 driver, unless I'm mistaken, of Elias Anderson there, as they make their way on through, and the Swede for RIP Racing Club pushing on, as meanwhile we're hearing that Leighton Austin has just gained a place on Renandito, and with Rapid Drivers Club driver has got it wrong somewhere else on circuit and dropped to P17, and Leighton Austin up to P16, but as they make the way on around, it is the case that Leighton Austin here having to go defense. Well, I don't think he's got to go defensive. I think the SOP Motorsport driver just trying to come on through, come the run to the S's there, no change in positions, but as they make their way through the corner, it is the case that we briefly cut to the battle for P10 as it goes on to the final lap. Kieran Sharp in P11, Davidson P10, but I think unless Davidson gets it wrong, that is where it's going to stay now. And as we are counting down this final lap, we look to Harry Phillips here, who makes his way through Melbourne hairpin, and well, it has been a race of drama up and down the field. Harry Phillips has had his fair share, to be fair, but as he makes his way into the final corner here, he qualified on pole, he's led it from pole, and as he makes his way to the time timing line. It's Harry Phillips from Wild Things Racing who takes the win at Donington in round number 2 of the Community Super League Season 2. And then it will be Geert Fischer who, as he makes his way through the final corner, it wasn't to be his win today, but it will be P2 as he comes to the line here, just cruising to the line. I think he's run out of fuel right at the finish, but P2 for Fischer, and then it will be P3 for Samuel Foch for SOP Community Racing behind his teammate, and there is Timo Karpinen, the SOP Community Racing driver, P4. It's a great day for SALT. Meanwhile, Yannick Kurtz for DC-Simracing, P5 in the end, the Dutchman, ahead of his teammate Tim Troket, who has made it all the way up to P6 come the finish. There have been some drive-through penalties for other drivers and instance for other drivers that have helped him, but you've got to give him credit. He has made his way all the way up the order from just within the top 20, and he comes home P6 ahead of Alex Rogers here, the SALT Community Racing driver, making it 4 drivers out of 4 for SALT who are in the top 10. He finishes P7, and there will be Quinton Sill who holds on to P8 ahead of Christoph Samin to the line. As you can see there, the SALT Community drivers lined up for the team photo all together. Tom Davidson completes what is the top 10 there, and then we have Kieran Sharp P11 ahead of Simon Ramsay as they make their way past the SALT roadblock, it would seem, as we look to the helicam, and indeed the SALT drivers there all parked up, and I think that photo op working out for them in the end. And we do have in the end Christoph Kling P13, Michael Races P14, Ian Hall completes the top 15. But that, ladies and gentlemen, was the race at Donington, and my goodness, what a race it was, as our drivers are made to jump to the pits. And it is the case, we'll be getting ready now to conduct our post-race interviews with our podium finishers. Don't go anywhere, we'll be back in approximately 4 to 5 minutes time to bring you all the words from our top 3, and you won't want to miss them. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, well, without further ado, our podium finishers are ready for their post-race interviews, and well, I am joined in the interview room, firstly, by Harry Phillips. And Harry, as our race winner today, it looked tough out there, whether it's in qualifying or the race, but you've taken the win at Donington. How does it feel to have finally picked up your first win in this season after being to the post at Kyalami?
Feels good. It was full of drama though. I mean, quali was really close and it was really tough with the conditions. Um, Going from kind of wet to kind of dry. It was really tough at the start. I couldn't even get a good banker in. And then in the last possible minute, I managed to get pole just about.
Oh, indeed. And just taking us through that qualifying session, of course, it was the case on the forecast today. Nobody was expecting rain on the server, at least as we were informed. There was no rain initially, but it was a damp track that gradually evolved and dried up. And I do have to ask, how important was it out there in being the last guy to head across the line for that flying lap? Because we saw those lap times evolve constantly.
Super important. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, in the last minute or two, if you're not just crossing the line, ready to set a fast lap, you're probably not gonna make it to the top row. Um, it was probably the best conditions you could get at the last. I think I got over the line at about a couple of seconds left, or about 10 seconds left. So I timed it just about right for the fastest lap. I think I did suffer with traffic at the end of my lap actually, and lost a few tenths. It would have been even faster if it wasn't for that as well.
We did see traffic playing a major role for your fastest laps and also for a number of others, and then translating into the race. Now, we saw at Kyalami your focus was to essentially try and get the run on Geert in the run to the opening corners and then go charging off and lead the race. Was the strategy the same this time? Because Donington did seem to be very pit stop dependent. Where you came out seemed to affect your race a lot.
Oh yeah, yeah. um, Well, yeah, my strategy changed from the first round because the first round I kind of went for an underfuel just for the experiment, really, because I knew Hiet was again, sorry for the pronunciation, it's a bit crap, but I knew he was gonna be faster than me, so I decided to underfuel to try and get fastest lap, try and get the best track position. Here though, I just fueled normally. I was a little bit underfueled, maybe about 5 liters or so, not by much. But then obviously, as we saw with the pro strat from the S4lt Community team, um, I think our pits aligned almost perfectly with myself and Safosh.
Oh, indeed. And then coming to that moment, of course, we caught it just as you and Foch were making their way into the first corner, both you battling side by side through Rockgate and down towards the old hairpin. And then the contact between the two of you. Just take us through it from your perspective. Less so, of course, the contact initially, but also just that shock of coming out side by side.
I was geared for a fight, to be honest. I haven't fought Safosh in a long while. I think probably since the last RDC night series that we participated in. It's been a long time. So I was geared for a fight. Maybe I was a bit too aggressive down to the old hairpin, but from my perspective, I did leave just enough room, and I was ahead. So I would still call it a racing incident, though. I mean, it's just a good fight.
Well, indeed, and we did see the very respectful return in terms of Safosh yielding the position later on in the lap, and the racing continued. And with that moment, of course, we did see your other rival from the salt racing community of Hirt leading the race, and then a drive-through penalty appeared. And I do have to ask, was there a little bit of a celebration or a premature one in the cockpit of that BMW M4 when you saw that appear?
Yeah, there was a massive sigh of relief because he was catching me. And I had a bit of damage and some flat spotting on the rear tires. So I was not going to be able to hold him off. And then as soon as I saw they got a DT, I was like, okay, I can relax now because I think Safosh didn't change tires is my assumption. So I knew I could pull away. Um, Timu, I think behind Safosh was really quick, but I think he was too far to make a charge on me in the end. And then he did actually come back at the end after the drive-through as well to I think finish P2, was it?
Indeed, he did. He charged to P2 in the end. But with that in mind, of course, and then looking ahead now, of course, today's race being a salt racing community dominated race from a standings perspective. But you picking up your first win here, we head to Mount Panorama in 2 weeks' time, and the Australian circuit, known as a circuit that generates very close racing over the mountain, but also those slipstream battles up the hill and down the hill. How are you feeling for Bathurst?
Looking forward to it. I'm hoping it'll be a bit closer of a fight. I mean, it was quite sparse near the end of this race. I'm not very good at Bathurst, so I might actually be somewhere near the midfield, maybe top 10, I think. Every time I've been at Bathurst, something has gone horribly wrong. Either disconnects, crashes, penalties, anything really. DDoS attacks as well. Every single time I've raced at Bathurst, something has gone wrong.
Oh, well, fingers crossed, things don't necessarily go wrong to that caliber at Mount Panorama in 2 weeks' time. But until then, Harry, as always, thank you for joining us in the interview room and congratulations today on taking your first win in this season of the series.
Thanks very much, Paul.
Having spoken to our race winner, we now come to our second place finisher of Geert Fischer. And Geert, a race today which went multiple ways, qualifying, of course, battling for that pole position in the end, qualifying on the second row, and in the end, finishing second here today after Kyalami's win. A positive day for yourself and the team, or one to work on?
I don't know. It was well, I don't know. It was kind of a chilled race. I didn't practice. I don't think anyone anyone practiced basically. So yeah, it was just a bit of a boring race, to be honest. And I was never gonna, because the incident, I slowed down as well to let Harry stay P1 there. So yeah, it was kind of so this race, I think.
Well, that is indeed very sporting for you to slow down as well, and that's great sportsmanship being shown by the salt racing community. And just on, before we talk about the race itself, obviously qualifying, it was a frantic dash. We saw at Kyalami, you managed to take pole position by the smallest of margins right at the end of the qualifying session, but not today. Was it, from your perspective, a very different qualifying session from what you expected with that weather transition? Or was it always going to be the case that you were used to the evolution and you just had to wait for the right time to put a lap in?
Well, yeah, the qualifying was my practice, so yeah, it was waiting for the perfect time to do a lap. And actually, I think I would have gotten pole if it wasn't for Harry's teammate, who I got stuck behind on the last like 3 corners of the track. Otherwise, I think I would have definitely gotten the pole position. So there was some interesting, you know, luck there from their team, or being at the right place at the right time. But yeah, I thought that was very interesting.
Oh, indeed, it is the case that misfortune can swing both ways, and that's misfortune for yourself today. And then coming on to the race itself, we did see, particularly in the opening stint of the race, you seem to really build the pace and then sort of stabilise. But the whole team as a whole, salt racing community, it was almost as if yourself and, if I remember correctly, Karpinen, you both were pushing very hard, whereas Foch and also Rogers were not quite on the pace. Was there a split in strategy in terms of some of you running more fuel than others? Just take us through it.
Well, no, we should have done that. I should have just followed the normal fuel, and then they could have done something different with higher fuel. Because if it were, well, we all took 105 liters in case of rain. So, but in hindsight, we should have split the strategy up between us. But yeah, we didn't end up doing that. Yeah.
Well, you guys definitely deceived me, because all the way through I thought you guys had split the strategy, so well done in that regard. And just obviously after the pit stops, we saw the instant between Phillips and Foch and how you played into it. We won't talk too much about that, but what I'd like to talk more about is, given the close nature of the racing between yourselves and the Wild Things Racing team, what's it like as a team having to deal with that dynamic? Because, of course, you can take the win today, but it may be the case that that win doesn't translate into salt racing community leading the championship after a round. Is it a lot of back and forth conversation to say we're all trying to finish within the top 5? Because at one point we thought all 4 of you in the team were going to finish inside the top 5.
Yeah. I think Alex Rogers got in some incidents, but otherwise we would have. Yeah, I think that would have happened. Yeah, it's yeah. The result is good for the team. I think that's important. But I think yeah. I can't say I would rather win and then be last. That would be a bit narcissistic.
Oh, indeed. And just I must ask, a brief comment on that drive-through penalty. We saw a number of them over the race. Just pushing a bit too hard?
Yeah, I think I got them all on exits, so I wasn't really paying attention that much. I wasn't planning on. I know I was, because Harry's tires were a bit finished, and at the time I thought it was it was kind of Fosh's fault, so I don't think it would have been fair to run away with the win there. I was gonna fight, but I just made the mistake of going a bit wide, and then that was it. So.
I see. But still, a great rivalry forming between yourself and Harry Phillips. And heading to Bathurst in 2 weeks' time for the Australian circuit, how are you feeling for the very challenging mountain?
Yeah, it should be good fun. I hope it will be a bit more interesting between us. Maybe we'll see some faster guys back again, because most of us were also doing, or some of, there was also other big endurance races going on. So it should be interesting to see if there's going to be a little bit more competition next race, I hope.
Oh, indeed. We'll look forward to seeing it. But until then, it's a pleasure as always to speak to you here. Congratulations on P2 today, and we look forward to seeing you out on circuit at Bathurst in 2 weeks' time.
You guys, thanks for commentating.
Well, as we now come from our second place finisher to our third place finisher of Sir Fosh, as he likes to be known. Mr. Fosh, or Sir Fosh, great racing from yourself today. Very close in qualifying between yourself and Harry Phillips and all the way through the race. And we'll come on to the race in a short while. But a positive day for the team and yourself?
Oh, of course, yeah. When we have 3 cars finishing in the top 5, that's obviously should extend our lead in the championship to try to defend the title for the second season. So looking good.
Oh, indeed. And it all started in qualifying, of course. And obviously, we've heard from Harry's perspective. We've also heard from Geert's perspective. But from your own, we saw, I think it was the case that you really started to put those laps in around the halfway point once the rain had stopped and the circuit was trying to dry up. And one thing we've heard time and time again is finding space on circuit. Just take us through, did you have any trouble or sort of difficulties in finding that space to set a fast lap?
Well, I mean, the qualifying started with the rain, so we always knew that the fastest laps will be at the end. I did my first run on wet tires, which was probably like 3 seconds of the pace that was set by the end. And it was just about basically timing the last run to be able to do, I think I ended up being able to do 3 laps and crossing the line like 5 seconds to go. So it was all about those last laps because, the first laps are just to get warmed up about driving the car, which in my case was driving the BMW here for basically the first time. So we always knew the last laps will be the ones that matter. So I was setting up for those and managed to do somewhat of a clean lap. Not clean enough to take the pole, but I severely lack experience in this car compared to my teammates and probably Harry Phillips as well. So taking P2 there was a bit of a surprise for me as well.
Well, I must admit, even though you say you've got a lack of experience in the car, to put it P2 and be only a 10th off a pole, very impressive, I must say. And, well, translating that into the race itself, we saw at the start, of course, you tried to go around the outside into turn 1 versus Phillips and put that pressure on early. Was the aim to try and get ahead and then sort of slow the momentum of the race down for yourself and your teammates to come together? Just take us through what your strategy was from that front row.
Well, like Geert already mentioned, we went for the safe strategy. In case it rained in the last 35 to 40 minutes, we could run longer and just put on wets if it started raining. So we knew we were not going to have the pace if Harry didn't do that, and he didn't. So there was no chance. Our first stint, especially for me, again, lack of experience will really show in the race. Just more mistakes, slightly lower pace than my teammates, so we knew we were not going to be able to really catch up. And then halfway point, we decided that the best way to try to get a win out of this, because we knew we were going to finish pretty well in the race from how how it played out. We thought the best thing to do is just to put Geert on the same strategy, like compromise his full fuel tank and just take new tires and go for it. And for me, it was to not take tires and just refuel. and try to cut Harry off and slow him down for the team, basically, to try to get the win out of this as well. Because I knew I'm not going to win this. It's just, in quali, you can get lucky in one lap, but in the whole race, the lack of experience is going to show for sure, even if the car is not the most difficult to get a decent pace out of.
Indeed. And then, of course, when you came out the pits, having run the strategies as they were, battling side by side with Harry through turn 1 and down towards the old hairpin. Of course, we've heard from Harry's perspective with regards to that contact at the old hairpin. But just from your perspective, of course, very close racing between the two of you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, at the time, I thought it was 100% my fault. But looking at the replay, it's a bit closer. And if this was like a really high-level esports competition, I probably would not have waited and decide or saw what the stewards decide. But because also my strategy was basically to try and slow him down and taking him out like that it's just not what I was going for. So decided to just wait and let things play out properly instead of just taking a cheap win like that, let's call it, even if it wasn't like 100% my fault, and maybe stewards would have decided that it was a racing incident. So I just took the hit basically, but we're happy with the positions we finished, so it's all good.
Oh, most definitely. And I must comment there in the fact the respectful racing and also the honesty. And that's something that I'm sure is appreciated and much loved by everyone tuning in. I must admit, personally, I really respect that. And just sort of translating it through to the end of the race, of course, as we heard from Geert and also from yourself mentioned earlier on, the fact that 3 members of the team finishing inside the top 5, all 4 members of the team finishing inside the top 10, giving your team great points going into round number 3. Is it the case that you feel as though the team's really on a high right now, or is there still a lot of work to be done, given, say, the lack of practice some members of the team had tonight?
I mean, so far it's working out pretty well, so I don't think I'm going to really usher people to do more practice, but yeah, it's looking good. It's looking good. Maybe we're going to have a steeper competition from the other teams in the next rounds, since there might not be that many big endurances overlapping, but so far, we're just comfortably sitting on our high horse in the championship, so it's looking good for us.
Oh, indeed. And then just before I let you go, a quick word on Mount Panorama, the Australian circuit. A circuit you're feeling confident about, or one that's going to need a lot of work?
Well, it probably needs a lot of work, but it probably won't get it because, different things to do. But I've heard the BMW is pretty good there. It's probably a lot more stable than what I usually drive, so it should be pretty easy to adapt. It's easier to adapt the cars that are safer than what you usually drive, and BMW is definitely that, which I really experienced today as well. I could count. I don't have enough fingers to count how many times I would have crashed in a Ferrari in this race if I drove like I did today in the BMW, but this car is quite forgiving, so you can't really be hitting walls, but it's less likely you're going to have some really weird incidents that you see in other cars.
Oh, indeed. Well, with that, we do look forward to seeing you out on circuit in 2 weeks' time. But until then, Sir Fosh, thank you for joining us in the interview room, and we wish you all the best for the races ahead.
Cheers.
So hearing there from our 3 podium finishers, and it is the case that all 3 of them there with very unique perspectives on the racing today, but at the same time that common thread of great sportsmanship and enjoying the racing between them. And we look forward to seeing how the story of what is Wildlings Racing versus SORT Racing Community goes on to what is Mount Panorama in 2 weeks' time, and also when we see some other drivers from the other communities return, particularly from other endurance events today, such as, but not limited to, the iRacing 24 Hours of Spa. Will that throw a further spanner or conundrum into the mix? But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we only have time now to say thank you very much for watching. And if you did enjoy it today and want to know more about the Rapid Drivers Club community, then why not check us out on our official Twitter, alternatively our Linktree. Links available on screen there. Our Linktree will take you to all our different social media and websites. And also a quick note to say, if you haven't checked out the SimGrid, then definitely check out the SimGrid, where we've been hosting this series, working with the SimGrid to put on the sessions and also manage the point scoring and all the registrations for our drivers. But now our drivers will be packing up their bags and making the trip down under to Australia, heading to New South Wales in particular for the Mount Panorama Motor Racing Circuit. Knowing in short short as Bathurst, it is the circuit that takes those prisoners. Up the mountain and down the mountain, it's open, it's freeform, slipstream racing on the straight, but when I try to make the way over the mountain, it's narrow, the walls are close, and one mistake could end up in disaster. And who will continue their championship campaign on a high? Will S4lt Community Racing be able to make it 3 rounds out of 3 they've led the way, or will we see the momentum shift? We'll find out all that and more on Saturday the 6th of August 2022. You will want to be there, you won't want to miss it. But we have been the Rapid Drivers Club. I have been Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain Spit, your commentator, and until next time, ladies and gentlemen, have a great rest of your weekend. Stay safe, stay smiling, stay positive, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.